Chapter 197. 181. Beyond the imagination of the world there were countless pieces of debris falling from the sky. Aman stood there with his sword stuck in the ground. Gabriel knelt on one knee in front of him and raised the battle axe high above his head with both hands. Aman, you win. Aman took the battle axe and put it away in his spatial magic tool. He stood there and asked, George, do you want to arbitrate? George didn't see clearly how the two of them won, but the scene in front of him had already explained the result. He quickly stood up and said, there's no need to arbitrate. Lord Gabriel has already admitted defeat. Aman pulled out his sword and gently patted Gabriel's shoulder. He smiled and said, well, the duel is over. You can get up. Gabriel said, you can kill me. Aman replied without batting an eyelid, I can kill you or not. According to the agreement of the duel, it should be up to me to decide. You are now my prisoner. I will ask the Empire of Igut to pay a ransom for you, a noble warrior. If the Empire of Igut refuses, you will become my slave, and I have the right to give you back your freedom. Gabriel nodded and said, it's like this. What do you plan to do? Aman smiled and said, this is the first time in my life that I've fought with someone in such a way. It's really enjoyable. I'm tired after fighting for so long. Let's have a good drink and eat something. I will send a messenger to the pharaoh about the ransom. You can only wait for the result. Your task has been completed. I still want to have a good talk with George. George came up and said, two top warriors of the continent. The duel just now was really wonderful. It's a pity I didn't see it clearly. Lord Gabriel, when did you become a warrior of the 8th rank? Even I didn't know. Gabriel stood up and replied, just now. George was shocked. He was stunned for a moment before he exclaimed, advance in battle. I've never heard of such a situation. Aman smiled and patted him on the shoulder. So what if you haven't heard of it? Haven't you seen it with your own eyes? I didn't expect that this duel would only last for a day. Let's continue drinking, we haven't finished talking yet. Everyone returned to the undamaged tent. It was time for dinner. Link cleaned up the broken utensils on the table. Aman took out all kinds of delicacies and invited everyone to sit down and talk. George and Link sat down, but Gabriel stood beside them. Link asked, why don't you sit down? Aren't you tired? Gabriel replied with a serious expression, my current status is Aman's prisoner of war. Aman is sitting at this table, so I should be standing. Thank you Aman for freeing me, and thank you for the food in front of me. The Supreme Warrior's temper was stubborn enough and he did everything very seriously. Aman had to say, then you can stand and eat. Drink a few more glasses of wine, I specially prepared it for the two lords. George, the Supreme Warrior Gabriel has completed his mission, and you are also here to kill me. What do you want to do? Do you also want to ask me for a duel? George shook his head and said, I'm not a supreme mage like Celia. How can I fight a supreme general like you without a summoned beast? If I really want to fight, it should be the Supreme Warrior Gabriel in front, and I fight from behind. That is the best way to deal with you. The Egyptian Empire sent the two of us to kill you because they wanted us to do that. Aman, but you didn't, how do you want to complete the task? George sat in a chair and stretched his arms, his expression seeming very relaxed. I accepted the order, but there are two kinds of tasks in this world, those that can be completed and those that cannot be completed. Before I set off, I said that if I can't complete the task, I will not go back. I have long known your ability, and your power is far greater than when you were leading thousands of troops. It seems that I have to practice hard, otherwise I won't be able to complete the task. Ammonius, for the sake of an old friend, can you let me stay here and practice? Aman and George looked at each other, and then both laughed, the laughter getting louder and louder, almost to the point of tears. Aman raised the jug and poured a glass of wine for George. You are no match for me, you can't complete the task. George, I can continue to practice and become stronger, maybe one day I will surpass you now. Aman blinked and said, you may improve, but don't forget that I will continue to practice too. I was far inferior to you at the beginning, and now I have a 9th level achievement. George, then I'm afraid I'll have to stay here. Will you take care of my food, drink, and accommodation? Before Amon could answer, Link couldn't help but interject, Lord George, if you are willing to stay in Salem, we would be more than happy. I will arrange everything, you can rest assured and live comfortably, just let me know if you have any requests. George suddenly sighed and said, continuing to break through, it's easier said than done. There are many people in the world who have awakened their power, but almost half of them die as first-level mages, and some are even unable to break through to the 2nd level in their lives. There are so many warriors in the world, but how many of them can achieve a higher level? After Enkidu, I have not heard of anyone else who has achieved the 9th level, and now there is Amon. How difficult or lucky is it for a supreme mage to advance? I wonder if I can have that kind of luck. Amon smiled and comforted him, everything depends on one's own effort, just like a task, there are those who can't and those who can. You were not born to be a supreme mage, were you? Lord George, there is also a shrine in Salem, and now a chief priest is needed to appease the people. If you stay in the city, you would be the most suitable candidate, I wonder if you would be willing. George glanced at Amon. You yourself are the most suitable, right? Amon shook his head and said, I'm not suitable, I'm already standing on the altar. George nodded. Well then, I can't live and eat for free, I have to do something. Before I complete the task, I will be the chief high priest of Salem. It's a familiar job for me anyway, it's easy to do. Gabriel was surprised. Lord George, you want to be the chief high priest of Salem? But their shrine. George turned his head and interrupted her. Great warrior Gabriel, you still don't know where I came from, do you? I was born as a sorcerer, and as a sorcerer, I achieved the highest level. The person who taught me was called Nietzsche. He was born as a miner in Duk, and he was also a supreme sorcerer. Now that Duk has become the city of Salem, and I came here, it may be the luck that guided me to a higher realm. Amon, if you want me to be the chief priest of Salem, there are 2 things I want to make clear. Amon held his glass and said, Speak. George said unhurriedly, Since I am the chief priest of Salem, then don't use the title of mage, just call me a sorcerer, what do you think? In the city of Salem, not only the nobles, but everyone can receive guidance in learning magic, no, let's just call it magic. Amon and Link looked at each other and slapped the table. Of course we didn't ask, in fact, we are all born as sorcerers. But whether it's magic or magic, it can't be taught casually, it has a test requirement, and can only be guided to the right person, it has nothing to do with identity. George smiled and said, Of course I know this, I am the chief priest, these specific matters are handled by the priests, I will tell you what to do. I also want to remind you of one thing, my mission is still to hunt you down, and maybe one day I will do it. Amon also smiled and said, I'll wait. George waved his hand. You don't have to be too nervous, I will tell you before I do it. Anyway, the Order of the Empire of Iga did not specify the time, maybe 10 years, maybe 20 years, if I live long enough, maybe 100 years. Amon raised his glass and said, Then I wish you a long and healthy life. The 2 clinked their glasses and drank, and as soon as Gabriel saw this scene, he already knew that George did not intend to return to the Temple of Isis as a high priest. He chose to stay in Salem as the chief priest, on the one hand, because he did not want to carry out the mission of hunting down Amon, and on the other hand, he should have his own considerations. A supreme mage like him no longer pursued wealth, status, or even glory, but achievements in this life, and may have encountered a bottleneck that he could not break through in his training, and was looking for a new opportunity. Gabriel was pondering there when Amon suddenly turned around and handed over a cowhide envelope. Want to know what Maria said to me? It's about you, see for yourself. Gabriel took the envelope and took out the papyrus inside, only to see that it read, Gabriel had to accept the order of the Empire to hunt you down, I know her temper, she will only fight you, so that it does not violate her beliefs. She has lost her power now, just like you did back then, this is a test. I hope you can help and guide her through the test, but everything is up to her own choice, and I wish her and you well. Amon, I have always known what you are doing, and I understand your love and your pursuit. Gabriel held the papyrus and looked at it for a long time, repeating a few simple lines of words to himself, his fingers trembling slightly, and after a long time, he looked up and said, I did not mention it to anyone. It turns out that the adoratress saw through it and knew that I had lost my power. No wonder she asked me to give this letter to you before the battle. Amon sighed. You never read this letter at all, although it has always been with you. How incredible it is for a warrior to hand a letter to his opponent before a duel, telling the opponent that he has lost his power. Maria may have been afraid that I would accidentally hurt you, so I asked you if you wanted to change the time and place, but you still insisted on the duel today. Gabriel replied, even if I did not lose my power, I knew that I was no match for you, and I knew the result when I asked for the duel. During the duel, I forgot what kind of power I once had, and just did what I could. No matter how strong you are, you will advance unconsciously during the battle. Amon asked with great interest, I have a personal question. For a 7th level supreme warrior like you, when you advance to the 8th level, do you usually lose your power? Gabriel replied, some do, some don't, the situation varies. It is said that this is a test of the gods for their people, and some people are given more difficulties. Amon, what's the difference between knowing and not knowing? Gabriel, in terms of the power mastered, there doesn't seem to be much difference, but there should be a difference, I'm not too sure about this. Amon turned to George and asked, when you advanced to the 8th level, did you also lose your power? George shook his head. No, it's just that for a period of time, I always felt that I did not have enough magic power to perform magic, so I lived in seclusion in the shrine until I had enough magic power to instantaneously cast supreme magic. As far as I know, 8th level supreme mages have different experiences and achievements. For example, Supreme Mage Julian, who died in battle, did not lose his power at all when he advanced. There must be some kind of clear guidance that I don't understand yet. Amon thought for a moment and asked, 9th level supreme mages like Liquid, Vord, Gilgamesh, and Goliath, did they also lose their power when they advanced from the 7th level to the 8th level? George shook his head. How would I know? No one will say it. Listening to you, you seem to understand the mystery behind it. Amon smiled and with a flick of his finger, the wine in the jug gushed out strangely and condensed into the shape of a mountain on the table, from which several paths appeared, each leading to different heights. He explained, like climbing a mountain, there are many paths that can reach the same height. Some paths can go further, some paths may bypass certain obstacles but not reach the top of the mountain. There may only be one path or several paths that can eventually reach the top. George's eyes lit up, and he pointed to the hill of wine on the table and said, the same path, different people can climb different heights, some people can only stop at the foot of the mountain, others may reach the mountainside. Ammonius, if there is a chance, I would like to have a good talk with you in private. Link chuckled and said, Lord George, you finally called Ammonius by his name? It doesn't sound like a joke this time. If you want to stay in Salem as the chief priest, there will certainly be plenty of opportunities. After he finished speaking, he glanced at Gabriel again, and seeing that she was still holding Maria's letter and standing there in a daze, he asked Amon again, Ammonius, Lord Gabriel is now your prisoner of war, how much ransom are you going to ask the Empire of Iga to pay? Amon also glanced at Gabriel, and then replied lightly, I don't want ransom, I just want something from the Empire of Iga. George asked, what is it? The Supreme General must want something special, it's not someone, is it? This sentence was actually a joke, and the someone he was referring to was, of course, Maria. The Egyptian Empire could not agree to this condition, and Amon could not make such a request. With another flick of his finger, Amon put the wine on the table back into the flask, and said expressionlessly, if you want to ransom the supreme warrior Gabriel, my condition is the position of the chief god of the Empire of Nra. George's hand trembled, and he almost dropped the glass, and said in a trembling voice, my God, what kind of condition is that? Aman replied coldly, the reform of Merneptah Pharaoh's divine system, the establishment of an Ra as the only heavenly god, and Seth as the head of the angels representing the heavenly gods, has nothing to do with me. But he sent Gabriel and you to kill me in the name of the oracle, so my request is to deprive the oracle of its name. This condition may be unimaginable, but for this matter, it is only natural for me to make such a request. As for whether I agree or not, that is a matter for the empire of Igut itself, and it has nothing to do with me. The hidden meaning of these words could only be understood by the gods. In the name of believing in an Ra as the only heavenly god, Seth occupied the position of the chief god of the Ennead and guided Merneptah Pharaoh to carry out a religious reform, but sent down an oracle to let the empire of Igut send people to hunt down Aman and prevent his people from returning to the plains of Duk. Now Amon's condition was that if they wanted to ransom Aman, they would have to exchange it with the position of the chief god believed in by the empire of Igut. This was simply beyond the imagination of the world, and perhaps even the craziest madman would not be able to say such a thing. But calmly analyzing the causes and effects, Amon's condition, while inconceivable, was not unreasonable. It was impossible for the empire of Igut to agree to such a condition in order to ransom a supreme warrior, and even saying it would be blasphemy, and Aman was not asking them to agree, he was just asking them to bring it up. George and Link recovered from their shock and looked quietly at Gabriel again, thinking to themselves that this supreme warrior would probably never be able to return. The shock on Gabriel's face was indescribable, as if he had heard the most impossible language in the world. Night had fallen, and there were no lights in the valley, and Gabriel stood in the darkness and finally spoke, Aman, you made such a condition to make it impossible for the empire of Igut to ransom me. So what do you plan to do with me, as your slave or free me? Aman asked in return, you don't have to ask these questions for now, I will make a decision when the empire of Igut officially rejects my request. Now I just want to ask you one question, I must seem crazy to others for making such a condition, but you know the process of this matter, does it make sense? Gabriel pondered for a long time and finally nodded. It makes sense, but it is also your own idea. Aman smiled. It is indeed just my own idea, and Merneptah can't stop me from thinking what I am thinking. If he is unhappy, then so be it, even if he flies into a rage in the palace. Gabriel, Maria entrusted you to give me a letter, didn't she give you an explanation? Gabriel, the adoratress also gave me a letter, and specifically told me to open it only after the fight. I haven't had time to read it yet, so I don't know what it says. Aman waved his hand. Then read it, if you don't want to say it, I won't ask. Gabriel took out another cowhide envelope from his arms, opened it, and pulled out a piece of straw paper. In the dim light of the night, he saw what was written on it. You have lost your power, I know that, and I have told Aman. I know your personality very well, and only by formally dueling with Aman according to aristocratic etiquette can you be freed from your mission. Even if you have lost your power, you will still make this request. Otherwise, you will not pass the test, and only when you make a choice will you receive true guidance. Now that you have seen this letter, perhaps you have passed the test and will face another choice. Aman will make a ransom request that the empire of Igut simply cannot accept, and you will become his prisoner of war. After the empire of Igut formally rejects it, he will release you and return your freedom. At that time, what kind of guidance will you receive in your faith? I know your faith very well, and there is no need to deliberately change it. I also know that your faith in the gods is the light in your heart. I hope that you will find the true source of divinity and accept the guidance of that light. Finally, I also want to ask you a favor, if one day Aman is sad and heartbroken, please protect him, as you once protected me. Gabriel looked at the letter, stood there thoughtfully without saying a word, and finally quietly put the letter away. Aman and the others did not disturb her, and Link said, things here are done for the time being, are we going back to Salem? I intend to hold a ceremony for the shrine to summon the gods, and now that there is a chief priest, I can ask Lord George to preside over it. Aman, summon the gods. I am also on that altar, and I will go to Salem myself, so it doesn't matter if I come or not. But Murin has been waiting for this day, and after I walked out of Igut, she has not shown up to see me, so she should be waiting to see when I will fulfill my promise." Link winked and said, "The goddess has not seen you. Don't you miss her a lot? Then this matter needs to be done quickly." Amon shook his head. "There's no need to be too anxious, this is also a celebration of the city. Let's wait here for a few more days, and when Elmar and John arrive, we will set off together, you may be surprised." They waited in the fortress that was being built for half a month, and Link did not quite understand why Amon said that he would be surprised. When John and Raphael walked out of the charcoal marsh half a month later, Link did not recognize Elmar at first, and only saw an enchanting girl next to Raphael wearing a robe that clearly did not fit, the attire of the priests of the Hittite kingdom, and should be Raphael's clothes. Link looked left and right, and could not help but ask John, "Where's Elmar? Where did that big guy go? And who is this beautiful girl?" John smiled a little strangely, but did not answer. The girl twisted her waist and said, "I am an emissary of Ammonius, known as the guardian goddess of the charcoal marsh. Link, you can call me the goddess of the marsh, or the angel of Elmar." This girl actually called herself Elmar, and Link was dumbfounded and petrified. Amon's voice came from somewhere, "Elmar, congratulations. Raphael, thank you too. Have you found Bright Moon Knight's whereabouts?" Elmar bowed and replied, "We have been searching for traces along the way, but unfortunately we did not find him, and we were afraid of delaying your business, so we came out as soon as possible." Amon's voice continued, "It's good that you came out safely, he may have left the charcoal marsh, and since he was ordered to assassinate me, let me deal with him." "Guardian goddess of the charcoal marsh, who gave you this nickname?" Elmar laughed and said, "It's Raphael. He even praised me for being untainted by the mud." Raphael hurriedly explained, "Amon, I was just joking with Elmarch." Amon's voice chuckled. "That's a good joke, Elmarch. Since you call yourself that today, then you must protect the safety of the charcoal marsh's trade routes in the future. Let's return to Salem together first, there is a celebration to be held." Chapter 198. 182, The goddess is coming 10 days later, in the city of Salem, which had just been completed and was still under construction, more than 5,000 residents gathered together for a celebration ceremony. The city had been established for so long, and it finally had a governor and a chief priest. The governor was the respected Lord Aesop, and the chief priest was once the high priest of the Temple of Isis, Lord George. This Lord George had fought alongside Ammonius, and when Ammonius was still the head of the Inare Legion in Igut, Lord George was the chief priest of the Inare Legion. The people here regarded Ammon as a true god, and thinking back to his battle experiences that shocked the kingdoms back then, it was a miracle that the gods showed when they walked on earth. Neither Ammon nor Aesop had any experience in planning celebrations, but George was an expert, and the ceremony to summon the gods was presided over by him. The shrine was located in the west of Salem, with the gate facing east, facing the rising sun. The main statue of the god in the hall was Murin wearing a golden crown and holding an ivy vine. Ammonius was half a head taller than her, and he stretched out a hand and gently wrapped it around her waist, standing slightly sideways on the altar. George preached the miracles of Ammonius to the people of the city on the long steps outside the shrine, and then, under the leadership of Aesop, the gate of the shrine opened, and the important people of the city filed into the shrine to offer sacrifices to the statue, summoning the gods to descend amidst the preaching and chanting. The people prostrated themselves in the square, praying devoutly and praying for the blessings of the gods. The cold statue seemed to become warm in an instant, looking through the magnificent gate of the shrine at the people in the square, and George rang the bell at the right time. Amidst the melodious sound of the bell, the clouds in the sky changed shape and converged into the shape of an ivy. A gentle breeze brought the fragrance of grass and leaves down from the sky, brushing past everyone's body. It felt so soft and comfortable, like the breath of spring waking up. The people closed their eyes and seemed to be able to see the statue in the shrine. At this moment, the god they had summoned had truly descended, and Murin was blessing the people. Ammon did not appear at this celebration, or rather, he could only appear in another way. After ascending to the altar, Aman felt different. It might have been awkward in the human world, but he had been molded to the altar by Link, so he could only face this situation calmly. He could clearly sense the thoughts of the people. They were thinking about the sacrifice of the deity on the altar, and it was not convenient for him to show himself again. If he appeared in the square, to whom would the people pray and salute? Is this the dilemma of the gods? Aman was thinking about this question. The city of Salem was very large, and it was originally built on a huge isolated island above the water. There were even several hills in the city, and various buildings were still under construction and were far from being completed. Within the outermost circle of the city walls, there were farmlands for farming. There were also sheds and cowsheds for raising livestock in the city. The so-called outer city was just a fortification, and the plan also included the inner city and various buildings. The main body was divided into two parts, east and west. There were fields within the outer circle of the city walls, mainly to prevent the entire city from being besieged for a long time, when the city could also provide a small amount of fresh rice and meat. More fields, farms, pastures, and mines were of course still outside the city. The city of Salem was large enough to accommodate tens of thousands of people without a problem, but now there were only a little more than 5,000 inhabitants. There were hundreds of businesses waiting to be built in the city, and new homes were being built everywhere. But there was a place in the east of the city that was empty, where the original town of Duk was located, and Link had deliberately marked it out, waiting for the arrival of Moses and the others. This open space was very large, and the original town of Duk had more than 2,000 inhabitants, which would belong to Moses and the other 60 or so people. Aman's intention was for the people to build their homes with their own hands, but Link ordered people to pile up a lot of materials on the edge of the open space, ready for Moses and the others. After arriving in the city of Salem, Aman did not live in the shrine, but built 2 buildings with his own hands on this open space. The first thing Aman built was the house he lived in. He stood in the open space and waved his hand. The stones and wood in the distance flew up and fell down after being cut by magic power in the air. It was as if countless invisible hands were piling up, and gradually, the outline of the house and courtyard appeared. Aman closed his eyes and did not look at it, but just made the small courtyard appear in front of him according to the imprint in his soul. The front yard had a low wall with no door, and through the front yard was a house, and behind the house was a courtyard, and in the courtyard was a separate house with a stove and anvil. Some things were not made of the building materials here, but flew through the air with Aman's gesture, such as a miner's sledgehammer. Gabriel was standing next to Aman at the time, stunned. She did not know the details of Aman, and never expected that a supreme warrior could perform such a magical skill, standing there and building a house out of thin air. Any ordinary person could build a house, but to witness this scene with her own eyes was incredibly magical. This first required mastering the most advanced message magic, and with the eyes closed, the soul clearly presented the house that did not exist, every brick and tile as if it were real. At the same time, the most advanced spatial magic was used to condense the illusory house into a real spatial structure, so that it existed in the mind and appeared in the real open space at the same time. Then the magic that was used could no longer be distinguished what kind of magic it was, and the various materials were manipulated to build the courtyard in a very short time. When the courtyard was completed, Aman turned and asked, "Gabriel, before the flood, you had been to Duk and passed by this courtyard many times, do you still remember it?" In shock, Gabriel took a deep breath. "This is where you originally lived, and you rebuilt it. I remember walking in front of it, and now this house is brand new, while your original courtyard is much more dilapidated." Aman sighed softly and said, "The old house was also brand new when it was first built. My courtyard disappeared with the town of Duk in the flood, and today I built it again in the same place, and this is how it looked when it was newly built." Aman, whom the city of Salem believed in, lived in this courtyard he built himself, and slept at night in the low stone house he had lived in since he was a child. The day after building his own small courtyard, Aman built a small 2-story building in the same way, which was in the opposite position to Aman's courtyard, and the architectural structure was exactly the same as the small building Maria had lived in. Gabriel recognized it as soon as the foundation appeared on the open space. Aman said to Gabriel, this is where you lived when you came to Duk, and now you will live here for the time being. Gabriel looked at the small building and said, "Are you reminiscing?" Aman replied thoughtfully, "Maybe it's a memory, maybe it's a new life, maybe it's a discovery in the cycle of reincarnation." Gabriel asked again, "I'm shocked that a supreme warrior can have such magical skills. In my concept, this is indeed a miracle that can only be performed by the gods, no wonder the people here worship you as Ammonius. I'm also curious, how did you do it? You are not only a 9th-level supreme warrior, but the power you have mastered even exceeds that of a 9th-level mage." Aman smiled. "Many people in the world are just as curious about you. Where does your powerful majesty come from? If you think it's a miracle, then observe it carefully." Gabriel asked again, "I am now your prisoner, and the adoratress ordered me to protect you in the letter, but your ability is far beyond mine. What can I do?" Aman replied, "Here, you only need to do one thing. Forget the body arts you have learned and the magic arts you have learned in the second awakening of your power. Don't think about the difference between them. See the house I built. This is what I want to tell you." Gabriel was stubborn, but she was not stupid. At this time, she also understood what Aman wanted to teach her. Aman wanted her to reawaken her power, to forget the differences and prejudices she had learned before, until she could master it. It was not easy to do this. It was like the flood that destroyed the town of Duk, but Aman rebuilt his courtyard out of thin air with a wave of his hand. The house looked the same as before, but it was brand new. It appeared in the soul and the world at the same time, a magical and perfect fusion. Gabriel did not know if she could do it, but the miracle was right in front of her, and Aman had done it. When she walked into the courtyard, Aman said softly, "If you can understand the power of the origin, don't forget to tell the adoratress what you have learned in the future." Aman did have a purpose. He guided Gabriel to understand the power of the origin on her own, and then told the secret through Gabriel to Maria. This was different from the way he taught other disciples. It was just a demonstration, showing her the miracle as a mortal, and telling her how to awaken and understand it. Only Gabriel could indirectly convey her clear experience to Maria. Maria was not Aman's disciple, and he would not consider himself a god in front of her, not even the thought of it. He knew how sincere the adoratress' faith was, but he wanted to tell her the secret of becoming a god. Aman settled down in this small town, with only 2 buildings in the inner city of Salem, working every day in the workshop in the backyard, who knew what he was building, and resting in his hut at night. On the day of the celebration ceremony in the city of Salem, Aman finally walked out of the courtyard and stopped at the place where Her Highness Murin used to be, sitting there quietly, his eyebrows moving slightly, and his eyelashes trembling. It seemed quiet and silent, but Aman felt as if he was in the middle of the sea, and he felt the summoning power formed by the refraction of countless people's thoughts. He had experienced this scene in Schrödinger's spiritual imprint, and now he was experiencing it himself. The one the crowd was summoning was him, Ammonius. It was hard to describe this feeling. His body was sitting in the open, and his soul seemed to exist in another state, hearing the voices of countless people calling to him. When the bell of the shrine rang, Aman's soul left his body, but it was not illusory. His 5 senses and consciousness merged into one, and he suddenly appeared on the altar, clearly seeing the worshippers. At this moment, there were the consciousnesses of thousands of people in the mind of a person, and the soul of an ordinary person could not accommodate and bear it at all. Only those who had passed the test of endless life and death could do this. Aman was still a little uncomfortable for a moment, and the bell of the shrine rang in his ears, causing him to be in a trance, and only in the deepest and clearest state of concentration could he stay awake. He quietly experienced it all, the eyes on the altar seemed warm and cold, and he finally felt that the desires of the people could condense into his soul, as if another clear self was standing on the altar. The domain of the source of divine power, so this was it. Aman took a long time to get used to the feeling in his heart, projecting the desires of the people. What the people saw was a statue with all kinds of prayers, and in the eyes of 5,000 people, there were probably 5,000 Ammonius, but they did not know where Aman was. As the bell rang, Aman gradually became clear, and he began to grasp this state. The so-called gods could hear prayers, but if they could not be controlled, they could not be called an ability, and he needed to not be disturbed, unless something he deliberately wanted to pay attention to really happened. When the desires of countless people were clearly reflected, like a bird flying in a mirror, Amon's physical and mental senses fused with the statue, and he suddenly felt something soft and warm in his arms, not the cold statue, but Murin's body. The goddess had also descended. At this moment, Amon, who was sitting on the empty ground, suddenly opened his eyes. On the small building in the distance, Gabriel was standing in front of the window looking at Amon, with the blade of order in his hand, because a man was walking across the open ground towards Amon. At this time, Amon was not in a good position to be disturbed, and Gabriel was about to jump out to stop the man and ask questions. As soon as Gabriel picked up the battle axe, he heard Amon's voice in his ear, "Don't stop him, let him come over, I know this person, he should be looking for me." While secretly instructing Gabriel, Amon had already stood up and greeted, "Vincent boss, why are you here, are you looking for me? Where are the others with you?" The newcomer was of medium build, with a round face, slightly chubby, and always smiling. The last time Amon saw him, he had shaved his head, and now he had short hair as long as a finger, a style rarely seen on the continent. Amon recognized at a glance that this person was Vincent Boss, who had appeared with Amitba, Vimalakirti, Maitreya, Manjushri, and Ksitigarbha, but now he had come to the city of Salem. The man made a strange salute, clasped his hands in front of his chest, and nodded slightly. "I have listened to the teachings of the revered one, and traveled all over the continent to increase my knowledge. The city of Salem is a miracle that has appeared in the wilderness, and I have come to visit it." Amon smiled and said, "There is a celebration in the city today, if you are here to see it, you should be watching the fun in the square of the shrine, why did you come to this empty space?" Vincent Boss replied, "I saw the statue on the altar, and I met you in the desert, and you did not appear in the square, so I thought you must be somewhere in the city, most likely in this uninhabited place, so I came looking for you, and sure enough, I saw you. Should I call you Amon or Ammonius?" "Amon, whatever you want to call me, but don't call me by the wrong name." "What's the matter?" "Vincent Boss, I just want to ask you a few questions. I saw Ammonius on the altar, and I met you here, which one is Amon?" The people kneeling in the square saw the statue, but could they really see you? When they saw you, were you the god in their minds? Amon did not answer, but asked in return, "What advice do you have for this?" Vincent Boss put his palms together again and bowed. "I can't say advice, I just want to say thank you for the wonderful teachings of the revered one, and seeing the scene today has given me some enlightenment." "Amon, oh, what did you think of?" Vincent Boss, "On the altar, people seek to fulfill their wishes and appear, here and now I see you, walking in the world as an incarnation as usual. If I don't see it with my own eyes, it will be difficult to understand." Amon laughed and said, "Interesting, very interesting. Your words are also very enlightening to me." Vincent Boss continued, "There is enlightenment and doubt. The revered one, Amitba, once said, the Buddha's true Dharmakaya is invisible, invisible, and invisible. He also said, if you see me with your appearance and seek me with your voice, you are a man of evil and cannot see the Buddha. The people praying in the square at this moment are offering to you with their voice and appearance. Are they seeing you? If not, then where are you?" Amon frowned, blinked, and replied, "I am not the Amitba that you follow. You may have asked the wrong person. The people in the square are guided by the beliefs in their hearts. I don't know where you come from, and I don't know where the Amitba that you follow has gone, but he must have experienced this to say that. I have not yet become a god that transcends eternal life. You are not asking me for an answer, but you just want me to think like that?" Vincent Boss nodded and said, "Yes, I just want you to think about what people's voice and appearance ask for and what you ask for, and think about why the Lion King went to follow Manjushri." Amon suddenly realized, "So you want to guide and persuade me to make the same choice as the Lion King Yugalu. Can I ask you a question, have you passed the test of endlessness?" Vincent Boss was startled before replying, "I am ashamed, I have not crossed the sea of bitterness." Amon showed a wry smile, "So you were just talking to me just now?" Vincent Boss replied seriously, "It can't be said to be empty talk, it's just a matter of first understanding and then proving. There is a way to reach the peak." Amon reached out and patted him on the shoulder. "There is a way to reach the peak, just go ahead, I have my own pursuits. I know you want to guide me, and to think that before your Amitba had even spoken, you already had this idea and deliberately found me in the city of Salem to tell me this. Vincent Boss, the Amitba shines in all directions, I am just carrying out my wish." Amon smiled and said, "In any case, I have to thank you, I have gained something from listening to you, and I believe that you have also gained something. It's a pity that I can't entertain you now, there are still things to do at the moment, so please go elsewhere and see more. One last thing to tell you, you came from the Shrine Square, and the place where we are standing now is where the Shrine of Murin was originally located in Duk. Can you tell me where this goddess is?" As he spoke, with a wave of his hand, Amon sent Vincent Boss far away with the power of teleportation. The scene changed, and Vincent Boss appeared again at the edge of the Shrine Square where everyone was gathered. Amon didn't mind chatting with him a little longer, but there was really something going on at the moment, because Murin had come, and Vincent Boss didn't see her. The content of the next 2 chapters may be strange, both of which are conversations between different people or gods about divinity. Readers who only like to read the plot may find it boring, but the discussion itself is not dull. The book has already reached the 6th volume, The Source of Divinity, which is just over half the length, and such a discussion is necessary to usher in the plot turning point from man to God, and the subsequent story will be even more intense and exciting. Chapter 199. 183, You are not the only genius. As soon as Vincent Beau was sent away, Murin appeared 2 steps away from Amon, looking at him with a smile. Her pretty red lips were slightly pouting, and there seemed to be some anger in her smile. She was not holding an ivy staff, nor was she wearing a golden crown on her head. Her long brown hair was loose, and she wore a lapis lazuli necklace on her chest. She was wearing a cotton dress with indigo stripes, which Amon had bought for her in Som for 60 copper coins. She did not appear as a goddess. Apart from the necklace, the girl in front of him was the shepherdess slave Numna that Amon had met. Amon was also looking at her. He was half a head taller than her, and he lowered his eyes slightly with a smile on his face. The two of them smiled at each other, and for a moment, no one spoke. It seemed that there was no need to say anything more. The seemingly impossible promise had now been fulfilled by Amon. In the small building in the distance, Gabriel saw this scene and turned away from the window. It was hard to guess how people would react when they saw a real god for the first time. Gabriel had believed in the Ennead since she was a child, but for mortals, there was always an indescribable awe when they saw a real god. But Gabriel was different. She was not afraid. It was the first time in her life that the warrior had seen a real god. Her shock and confusion were indescribable, but she turned away and stopped looking. Perhaps she did not want to disturb the 2 people talking, and Amon did not need anyone to protect him. After a long time, Numna suddenly glared at Amon, took 2 steps forward, hugged his arm, and leaned her head gently on his shoulder. She said in a slightly resentful tone, "Amon, you are so bad." Amon was stunned. He could not understand how he was bad. The tone of the goddess sounded like she was acting coquettishly. Even though Amon had experienced countless storms and dangers, he did not have much experience dealing with women acting coquettishly, let alone a goddess. The goddess's hair tickled his earlobe and neck. Amon lowered his head and asked, "Did I do something wrong?" "Guiding people to build cities in the plains of Duk and building shrines for you, that was my promise back then, and now you see it fulfilled." Namna leaned into Amon's arms. She grabbed one of his hands and put it around her waist. "Have you ever seen a shrine like that?" Amon smiled a little embarrassedly. "I didn't expect them to build the statue like that. If you're not satisfied, I can let them rebuild it." Namna, I didn't say I wasn't satisfied. That's how I appeared back then. It's the position we're in now. Amon, if that's the case, why are you saying that I'm bad? Namna giggled. It's not that I want to scold you, but the appearance of such a shrine in the plains of Duk would probably make some gods' noses crooked with anger. Amon, as long as you don't have any objections, I've been out of the Igut for so long, and you've only shown up now. Was it because you were waiting for me to fulfill my promise? Yun Namna, yes, I was waiting for this day. I really didn't misjudge you. You did something that shocked the world, and today you surprised me again. Amon, what's wrong? Wasn't today's ritual expected by you? Yun Namna, you actually hugged me on the altar. This shows that you have passed the test of endless life and death, have achieved the 9th level of the power of origin, have comprehended the domain of the source of divine power, and can share this divine realm with me. Amon smiled. That's an unexpected gain. If you mind, I can leave that statue. I didn't expect this when I first made the promise. Yun Namna clenched her fist and hit him lightly in the chest. I didn't say I didn't want to. You deserve this. I've been trying to guide you. I didn't expect you to already accept guidance. Why didn't you tell me? Amon, you haven't seen me. How could I have told you? Yun Namna, which god did you receive guidance from? This must be approved by the main god of the divine clan. Could it be that you joined the Ennead? In any case, I'm very happy that you have joined the divine clan and don't need to get the secret of becoming a god from me, but you still built a shrine for me and returned my divine realm. This is what I'm most grateful for, but I also feel that it's a bit of a pity. Amon asked, what's a pity? Yun Namna raised her face in front of his chest and smiled playfully. It's a pity that I wasn't the one who guided you and couldn't make you make a vow to me. Her face was so close that Amon could kiss her lips if he lowered his head, but he sighed softly and said, is the meaning of that kind of vow what you want? I've seen the Scorpion King and the Lion King, and the vow is still there, but Tiamat, who guided them to join the Anunnaki divine clan, has long since fallen. Yun Namna stepped on his foot. It's just a joke, look at you being serious. Can you tell me who guided you to join which divine branch? I don't want to force out your secrets, but if you are the emissary of the Ennead, your statue cannot appear here, because from today on, this is also your domain of the source of divine power. Amon replied, I'm not the emissary of the Ennead. To tell you the truth, I didn't join any divine clan. He was telling the truth, and Yun Namna could hear it. She stood up straight in surprise and looked at him. So what's going on? Did that cat tell you the secret? Batet fell because she violated the vow. Why would she do that? Amon showed a sad look and shook his head. She didn't fall because she violated the vow, she left to be free. As for the power of the origin, I comprehended it myself, and if there is any unknown secret that she once told me, it is the test of fate, the judgment of the end. Before Schrödinger left, he opened his spiritual imprint to me. Yun Namna, did you already know the origin of the cat beside me? Yun Namna lowered her head and said, I didn't notice the cat at first, and when I met you in Som, I didn't even know it was by your side. Later, Batet appeared to separate the Red Sea from Moses and the others, and only then did I know that she had been by your side. As far as I know, Batet was once the emissary of the Ennead who was closest to becoming a god, and I didn't expect her to leave just like that. Amon, are you very sad? Amon, I should probably be happy for her, it was a kind of relief, but I was really reluctant to part with her at the time. Yun Namna hugged Amon's arm again. It seems that it's not just me who is paying attention to you. You are actually able to comprehend the power of the origin on your own, and there are very few people like this in the history of the continent. The last one to comprehend the power of the origin on his own and become a god was Marduk. This time it was Amon's turn to be taken aback. Marduk. He did not receive guidance from the divine clan, but he comprehended the power of the origin on his own and eventually became a god who transcended eternal life. Yun Namna nodded. You are a rare genius, but not the only genius in the world, and the path you can take has been thought of by countless people over the millennia. But even if you understand this secret, it is difficult to train to the end of your limited life, and even if you do reach the end, it is difficult to pass the test of fate and the judgment of the end, and finally become a god who transcends eternal life. You have not done this yet, and before you, Marduk had done it. Amon asked puzzledly. In that case, why did he become one of the two main gods of the Anunnaki divine clan? Yun Namna blinked and looked at Amon meaningfully and said, "You are not a true god yet, and you do not understand the world of the gods, and after achieving transcendence and eternal life, what is the meaning of your pursuit? Could it be the boundless emptiness and solitude that was eternal and indestructible?" Without the backing of a divine clan, all gods would fall into this confusion. It was Ea, the god of wisdom in the Anunnaki divine clan, who received Marduk, and Ea was the one who received Marduk after he became a god, not the guide before he became a god, and Marduk eventually joined the Anunnaki divine clan. Such gods were often the most powerful because of their relationship with the gods. Think of Enkidu. What would happen if he became a true god who transcended eternal life? Marduk was bound by very little by the oath, but he had great power, so he was able to become the main general in the War of the Gods. Later, he broke with Enlil and eventually split the Anunnaki divine realm into two, becoming another main god. Amon, it is not impossible for you to have such achievements. Everything you have done so far has exceeded my expectations. Amon spoke after a while. Do you want me to become another Marduk? Murin hugged his arm tighter. I've waited so long for you. You're unique. I want to protect you and wait for you to become a real god who transcends eternal life. Then, I'll be your guide and let you join the divine clan. At that time, everything we have done today will have the greatest meaning, and the plains of Duk will become an eternal realm for you and me. Amon put his other hand on her shoulder. Yun Namna, you should know me. There is no way I will bow to Enlil, and I will never join his divine clan. Yun Namna, I know that your heart has long since broken with Enlil, but it doesn't matter. I can still receive you to join the Anunnaki divine clan, and if you are already a god, you only need to make a very simple oath. Maybe one day, you will break with the king of gods like Marduk did, but I know that you will not betray me, and that is enough. Amon asked in puzzlement, why do I have to join the Anunnaki divine clan? Yun Namna, you don't understand now, but when you truly become a god, you will know why. Your divine realm is in the plains of Duk, and joining the Anunnaki is probably the only choice. I know what the Scorpion King is thinking. He wants to become a true god and establish his own divine clan, but when the time comes, he will realize that it is too unrealistic. Marduk's choice back then has proved this. Amon was confused. I really don't understand. Let's talk about it when the time comes, and if I refuse, I hope you will not be disappointed. Yun Namna resumed her smiling expression and looked at Amon affectionately. You have not disappointed me. What I said today is not a request, but a wish to repay you. Let's talk about it when you become a god. Since you already understand what it means to be tested by fate and judged by the end of the world, and you have a divine realm, you should think about how to take that last step. Let me help you, okay? Amon, how do you want to help me? Yun Namna pointed in the direction of the shrine. I heard what that man said to you just now. He wanted to guide you to think in another way, and although he did not shake your faith, what he said was quite interesting. You have achieved what you have today, and I am afraid it is not suitable for you to appear on earth like this. Amon smiled bitterly. It is a little inappropriate. People can't tell whether I am Amon or Ammonius, can't tell whether I am a living person or a god standing on an altar, and every time I appear, it will be regarded as a miracle. Yun Namna stretched out her finger and poked at his chest. In fact, you don't need to appear as you used to. The statue is your perception, and if necessary, you will understand what people want and want. If you want to walk on earth, you can do what I used to do. Remember, the shepherdess Yun Namna you helped. Amon smiled and put his arm around her shoulder. You still are. Yun Namna, you are really rare. No matter who I am, you have never changed. You have more important things to do now. In order to successfully pass the final test, there must be a place where you can practice in peace, even if you will not be disturbed for hundreds of years, absorbing the endless power in the divine realm, and waiting for the final test to come. Amon, a place like Eru? Yun Namna, the gods of the Anunnaki have their own divine palaces on earth. I will open the Murin Divine Palace on the Saya Plateau for you, and when you need to practice, you can go there. Amon smiled. I don't want to occupy your divine palace, and I also have my own disciples who need guidance, but I want to see what that so-called divine palace looks like. And then guide my disciples to build one of their own. Inanna blinked her eyes. That's not easy. If you want to, you can give it a try. Can I make a request? Amon, go ahead. Namna, you can enter and exit my divine palace at will, and if you build your own divine palace in the future, when I want to find you, I can also come and go at any time. Amon simply replied, no problem, building a divine palace is just my idea, I am afraid I will need your guidance and help. Do you want to take me to your Murin divine palace now? Namna, if you like, you can also call it Namna's Rose Garden. But there is one more thing you have promised, and so far you have not fulfilled it. Moses and the others have not returned here, they are still lingering on the way. Amon thought for a moment. It was Marduk's conditions that stopped them, I let them choose for themselves, this is the last test before they return home. But I want to tell you, even if they return to Salem, they will no longer believe in Murin. Namna's expression became a little resentful again. I know very well what the people of the world think, it doesn't matter whether they believe in me or not, my divine palace has been completed in the city of Salem. But this is a bet between me and Enlil is, after all, the main god of this divine realm, and since an agreement has been made, I must abide by it. Amon asked, what agreement did you make with Enlil? Namna replied, after the great flood, I wanted to restore the realm of the source of divine power, and I had to go out of Enlil's divine realm to find the descendants of Duk. Enlil made 2 bets with me, the first was that there would be such a person, not bewitched by my beauty, and not eating all the bread in my hand, who would come to Enlil to redeem what I had lost, and not turn the redemption into a robbery or a renunciation of his promise. It was you who helped me win the bet in Psalm. Amon, what about the other bet? Namna replied faintly, if the descendants of Duk were to really return home, they would have to go through many hardships, and that would be driven by a strong desire. The one who would lead them to the plains of Duk must have the strongest courage and the strongest will. The final test of the gods is a price and a sacrifice, to be able to distinguish between one's own selfish desires and ideals, and if this person is willing to give up his own desires in order to fulfill his wish, then Enlil will let the people of Duk return home safely. Amon frowned and said, can you be more clear? Namna lowered her head and whispered, I have made it very clear, Enlil's bet is that the leader who leads the people of Duk back home is willing to stay outside the plains of Duk. This is not coercion, but a sacrifice and price he is willing to pay for the sake of his people. Amon's frown deepened, why would Enlil make such a request? Namna's voice became even softer, because Enlil did not think of one thing, he thought that the people who built the shrine for me would be the descendants of Duk, and that the person who would lead the Duk miners back home must be you. I made this agreement, and at the same time made my own request, if the leader of the Duk miners could voluntarily pay that price in order to fulfill the wishes of his people, then I would guide him to join the Anunnaki divine clan, and Enlil agreed. Amon suddenly realized, so that's how it is, the god's agreement was prepared for me. Namna, yes, all this was prepared for you, but now it seems ridiculous. The person who built the shrine for me is not a descendant of Duk, and the person who will lead the Duk miners back home is not you, the god's agreement points to Moses. Amon gently released the arm around Namna and said in a deep voice, this is the agreement between you and Enlil, neither I nor Moses has any agreement with Enlil, there is no need to abide by anything. Chapter 200 184, My sins. Amon looked at Namna for a long time, and finally sighed. You have never forced me to do anything, and I can't blame you. I will tell this news to Moses and let him decide for himself. But I will only tell him the situation he is facing, not for him to submit to Enlil, and I will not even say that this is Enlil's test. Namna, if he voluntarily stays outside the plains of Duk and watches his people return home, so that the miners of Duk can be freed from the fate of being sinners, this agreement will also be valid for Moses, and I will guide him to join the Anunnaki divine clan. But this can only be told to Moses afterwards and let him make a choice first. Ammon narrowed his eyes and said, maybe Moses will make a different choice, and there should be a conclusion to this matter. I will go find Moses now and see how he and his people are doing, and then go to Numna's rose garden. But I am not doing this for Enlil. In fact, I am already an enemy of Enlil, and sooner or later there will be a battle between Salem and Enlil in the north. On the day of the summoning ceremony for Murin and Ammonius in Salem, Ammon quietly left Salem, and Link controlled the shuttle to take Gabriel with him, setting off towards the southeast corner of the plains of Duk. 2 days later, they crossed the wilderness, bypassed the city of Marduk built by Usser, and arrived at the place where Moses and the others were staying. While Ammon was looking for Moses, far away on the other side of the Siyah Desert, in the governor's mansion of the Cape States, Aristotle, who had been a senior advisor for many years, formally bid farewell to Rod-Dik, and he would take a ship to sea and return to his hometown of the Kingdom of Hellas. Rod-Dik held a banquet to bless Aristotle. After the banquet, he invited the sage to his private study. The two had a long private talk. Rod-Dik sighed, "Sir, you have been by my side for a long time. Thanks to your guidance and teachings, I can face so many things that have happened. Aristotle, you have to believe in your own wisdom and ability. It is these that have allowed you to survive many trials in the world. I've been by your side for 10 years and followed you to many places, searching for problems worth thinking about. It's time for me to return. My teacher is still waiting for me in the distance." Rod-Dik asked, "Sir, what have you been thinking and searching for in the past 10 years that you've been away from your hometown?" Aristotle replied, "I'm looking for the source of divinity and thinking about what gods are. I've been to shrines all over the continent, looking at all kinds of gods on the altars, and observing how people offer sacrifices, worship, and pray. I've also experienced the war on the continent, where people fought in the name of gods, and experienced the divine reform of the empire of Igut. I've seen the changes of the gods in the shrines with my own eyes. Today, it's finally time for me to leave." Rod-Dik asked again, "Did you come to any conclusion, sir?" Aristotle, "It can't be said to be a conclusion, it's just the result of thinking. Remember last month? A man named Vincent Beau came to visit me and talked about the samadhi of feeling and seeing, not feeling and seeing, and not feeling and seeing. It was very interesting and had something in common with my thinking." Rod-Dik, "I don't understand what you mean. Can you explain it clearly?" Aristotle, "I've been thinking about the source of divinity in metaphysics, looking for the way things exist. There may be 3 kinds of it. One can be felt and destroyed, another can be felt but not destroyed, and the third cannot be felt or destroyed, but it exists." Rod-Dik asked, "What is that?" Aristotle replied, "The rational soul of human beings and gods." Rod-Dik was puzzled. The rational soul is in our hearts, why can't we feel it? Who is regarded as a god depends on faith, why can't it be destroyed? Aristotle smiled, "Using words to describe it is always biased, you need to experience it yourself. People may lose their rationality, but the rational soul doesn't not exist just because you don't have it. You may believe in gods or not, and the statues on the altars may be destroyed, but the divinity is in the rational soul. I've traveled around the continent, entered various shrines, and seen people worship various gods. Why are the gods on the altars called gods? Since ancient times, all kinds of gods have been worshipped on the altars, and the real divinity doesn't even lie in the gods themselves that people see. God is pure thought, and the reality of thought is life, and the eternal continuity is God. Sometimes it's people themselves who create gods that don't exist, seeking to prove the part of life that is close to God. This is a difficult concept to understand." Rod-Dik rubbed his chin for a long time, then said with a bitter smile, "It's really difficult to understand, I need to think about it. But a few days ago, I received a letter from a god, and you and I both know this god. You even saved him." Aristotle asked curiously, "Which god is this? Is it the one you Igut people believe in?" "Why don't I remember?" Rod-Dik reminded, "Do you remember that child? In front of the shrine, a priest almost cut off a finger in the name of a god." Aristotle, "Supreme General Ammon?" Rod-Dik nodded, "Yes, that's him. Now in the ruins of the town of Duk, someone has built a city. There is a shrine in the city, the statue of Ammon holding Murin, the people there call him Ammonius. Do you think it's interesting? Ammon almost had his finger cut off in front of the shrine of Murin. Aristotle smiled and said, "This is a very good annotation for my thoughts just now. Why would Ammon stand on the altar with Murin in his arms? People understand the gods they expect in their own way. The Ammon we know is not eternal. He was in the same place, and even almost had his finger cut off because of Murin's oracle. If that scene really happened, would there still be today? Then what is the so-called eternal? It is a kind of perfection in faith, transcending him and reflecting on him, like the reflection of the starry sky on the surface of the water. Before I left my hometown, my teacher asked me to find the ideal country in people's minds. The ideal country should be in a place that we can't perceive and can't destroy." Rod Dick asked, "Is this the answer you came up with after 10 years of observation and thinking?" Aristotle replied, "This is just a way of answering. What I can say with words is not the eternal answer. If I take it as the answer and make the gods my own will, I may create the gods in the name of man, which will cover up the glory of divinity. After this, thinking about eternity becomes a creed of the world, all this will become my sin." The conversation between the two of them was a little abstruse. If someone was listening to them, they would simply be confused. Even Rod Dick did not understand what they were talking about. Ammon did write a letter to Rod Dick and sent an envoy to the Cape States, asking the governor to send someone to deliver it to the pharaohs of Igut. In the letter, he mentioned that the supreme warrior Gabriel had challenged him to a duel in order to fulfill the imperial order. Gabriel was defeated in the duel and became a prisoner of war, and Ammon proposed a condition to ransom the supreme warrior. Rod Dick didn't care much and opened the letter to read it. At that time, he was so frightened that he kicked over the table in front of him. He hurriedly ordered several of his trusted mages to restore the letter to its original form, pretending that he had never read it, and sent someone to send it to the capital. After reading the letter, Pharaoh of Merneptah's face was gloomy. He retreated into the inner hall without saying a word, and then drove all the servants and maids out. He closed the door and flew into a rage, smashing everything around him that could be broken. He roared, "Ammon, I will not let you go. The gods will not forgive you either." When he was tired of roaring and looked at the smashed things all over the floor, he felt a little ridiculous. Why would the mighty pharaoh of the empire of Igut be so furious over a supreme general? The gods had not forgiven Ammon in the first place. Even if Ammon had not written this letter, Seth would have sent down an oracle for the empire of Igut to hunt him down. After calming down, Merneptah was surprised to find that he had not destroyed the letter in his rage, so he ordered someone to send it to the shrine for safekeeping. This was the most evil evidence of Ammon's crimes. If anyone still wanted to accuse the empire of unfair treatment of Supreme General Ammon, let that person read this letter and understand why the gods had punished him. But no one publicly accused anything, and the ministers of Igut even carefully stopped mentioning Ammon. Whether Ammon was guilty or innocent, it was as if the supreme general of the empire had never existed. At this time, the internal situation of the empire of Igut had stabilized, the construction of the new capital had begun to take shape, the main gods worshipped in the shrines of the various cities in the country had been replaced, and the forces of the various classes in the country had also undergone a new integration. Merneptah was in power, and the secular power was concentrated in the hands of Pharaoh as never before, and the goal of the divine reform was finally close to completion. Now there was only one thing that had not been done, and it was like leaving a glaring flaw on a mural. If it was not removed, the whole painting would not be perfect, and this flaw was the adoratress of the shrine of Isis. When Merneptah first took power, she could not be easily touched, but now that the reform had been completed, it was time to solve this problem. Anare was the only god, Seth was the head of the angels who guarded the royal and divine power, and Pharaoh was the only one who represented the gods. The existence of the adoratress, who symbolized the Igut under the protection of the goddess Isis, could no longer be tolerated. The adoratress of Isis was a title passed down from generation to generation, and it did not specifically refer to a specific person, but in reality, it was now Lady Maria. Maria had great prestige and influence, and Merneptah had to use this prestige and influence to change the original status of the adoratress, which required the cooperation of Maria herself and the ingenious use of the will of the gods in order for everything to be carried out perfectly. Merneptah had already heard Seth's voice when he prayed in the shrine, and Seth told him what to do. The head of the angels told Merneptah that Pharaoh should marry the adoratress of Maria and make her the chief high priestess of the empire, symbolizing the complete integration of the divine power and royal power of the Igut. In ancient legends, Isis was married to the first pharaoh, Osiris, who founded the empire of Igut. At that time, Seth was the guardian of the royal power, and Horus did not exist in the world. Today, Seth became the head of the angels and married the adoratress, who symbolized the guardian of Isis, to Pharaoh, who was bestowed with the divine power of monarchy, completing the return of history in the name of the oracle and ending the history of the adoratress of the temple of Isis. This was the most acceptable way for the people of Igut, and it would be fine as long as Maria herself stood up and announced the oracle. Seth did not let Merneptah give the order directly, and he would first talk to Maria in the name of the gods. On the day that Merneptah flew into a rage in the palace, Maria, who was far away in Montefiore, also heard Seth's voice. At that time, Maria was praying to the goddess Isis in the temple, and although the goddess Isis's title had now been changed to the Holy Mother of Angels, Maria did not change her faith because of this, and her faith was still so pure. At that moment, a voice sounded in her soul, "Maria, your prayer has touched the gods, and you will listen to the oracle of the archangel." Although the voice sounded in her soul, Maria could sense where it came from, as if the statue of Seth in the side hall of the main temple was speaking in a strange way. Maria had been the adoratress of the temple of Isis for almost 7 years, but she had never heard the voice of the goddess Isis. Today, she heard the legendary oracle for the first time, and it was Seth who had descended. Maria was stunned for a moment, but she did not panic or get too excited, and then calmed down and replied in her soul, "Lord Archangel, what is your message?" Seth asked, "Why do you call me Lord?" Maria replied, "In accordance with your wishes, it was you who sent down the oracle for the empire of Iga to honor Ra as the only god, so how should I address you?" Seth, you can call me the symbol of the glory of the gods, the leader of the angels, an angel who transcends eternal life, not a mortal like you. I will tell you about the final changes that will take place in the empire of Igut, and your fate as the adoratress of Isis. You will become the chief high priest of the empire of Igut, marry the pharaoh Merneptah, and receive the blessings of the angels. Maria's face lost all color, and her voice trembled uncontrollably. "Why me? I am the adoratress of Isis, not the queen of the empire of Igut." Seth, it was the gods who gave you the status you have today, and now that you have it, you have to pay for it. You are no longer the daughter of that merchant in the Cape States, who gave you the status you have today. Now that the gods have made a request to you, what wish do you have to ask for from the gods? Maria replied, "If the oracle must do this, then please depose me as the adoratress and choose another adoratress who is willing to become the high priest of the kingdom and marry the pharaoh, and thank the gods for freeing me." Seth said slowly in a low voice, "The adoratress is a glorious title, but those who are the adoratress may also suffer a tragic fate. Think about adoratress Troni 40 years ago. Now that the divine system of the empire has changed, only obedience to this change is the perfect ending. Dethroning you and replacing you with another adoratress will not solve the problem. In the eyes of the people, you are the true adoratress." "Maria, I refuse. Even if I suffer a tragic fate." Seth snorted coldly, "Have you turned your back on your faith?" Maria's voice regained its firmness, "I know my faith very well, and it has never been as clear as it is now. The meaning of the adoratress of Isis is to protect and bless, and to accept this different identity means to live in a different way. This is my honor, my mission, and my responsibility. For it, I have to face all kinds of conspiracies, to observe the corners where the light of the gods does not shine, and not even to be touched by the people I love. This is the price I have to pay, and it is also my vow to the goddess Isis, but this vow does not include the request you made." Seth paused, "Maria, this is the smartest choice for you as a person. Marrying Pharaoh is just a symbol. If you don't like Merneptah, Pharaoh won't even really touch you, and you can also choose the lover you like. You just have to agree to this condition. This is the oracle of the gods, and it is also the need of the empire of Igut. Maria asked in response, Seth, you have replaced Horus's position and become the head of the angels. In order to steal the glory of Isis, you actually want the adoratress of Isis to cooperate. Don't you think this request is ridiculous? Seth's voice was angry. How dare you speak to me like this? Maria, I did not send the oracle because of you, but because of your identity as the adoratress. In fact, I can also speak to you in the voice of Isis, but as an eternal angel, I want to tell you that the goddess Isis is long gone, and you are the most ridiculous person in the world. Maria's shoulders moved as if she was trembling, but she replied with words that surprised Seth, even if the goddess Isis makes such a request, I will refuse, because that is not what I protect and bless, it is the gods who have turned their backs on themselves. I have never heard the voice of the goddess Isis, but that does not prevent me from accepting the guidance of the light in my heart, whether she is present or not, whether you speak or not. Hearing your voice, I seem to see your fall. The God in my heart and the God on the altar will no longer be you, but the faith that guides me will remain. Seth was silent, and the oppressive atmosphere in the shrine was suffocating. When he spoke again, there was no anger in his voice, and he just said coldly, I am only here today to tell you about the oracle that will come, not to ask you to agree. 3 months later, all the city-states of the empire of Igut will send down oracles, and the adoratress, Maria, will marry Pharaoh according to the guidance of the gods and become the chief high priest of the empire, symbolizing the final fusion of the divine power and royal power of the upper and lower Igut. Chapter 201. In the end, I didn't give Han Fei the address. Instead, I forced him to record the conversation and save it to 3 format. Then, I sent it to my email. After receiving the message, I couldn't work anymore. At 3:00 in the afternoon, I hurriedly took my laptop and returned to my room. I opened it as fast as I could, entered, and clicked. After a series of buzzing sounds, Zhuobufan's voice sounded first. Han Fei. Do you have any news today? My heart skipped a beat. His voice made my heart throb. Zhuobufan rarely said hello on the phone. He always spoke directly. His voice was soft and mellow. It was indescribably pleasant to the ears. Then, it was Han Fei's lazy voice. Even if I have news, why should I tell you? Zhuobufan paused, and then his voice stirred. Han Fei, did you see Xiao Noa? Or do you know where she is? Zhuobufan was really smart. With just one sentence, he could tell. Why should I tell you? I clutched my chest. Han Fei, if he wants to know, just tell him. Why do you have to make him anxious? Zhuobufan said gently, of course, it's for Xiao Noa. I think you don't want her to be sad. If I tell you, that will make her sad. Isn't it because of you that she's sad? There's a saying that the one who started the trouble should untie it. Have you ever heard of it? Okay. Xiao Noa told me to tell you that she doesn't love you anymore. You don't need to look for her anymore. She will never see you again. I wanted to cry. Han Fei, why are you like this? Why did you say that? Oh. I don't believe that Xiao Noa would say that. His voice was still gentle. Why don't you believe it? Based on what you have done, Xiao Noa has long been disappointed in you. What did I do? Why didn't you tell me? Are you afraid that I would understand? I don't want to talk to you. Let me tell you, this is what Xiao Noa said. She said that she's good and that you don't owe her anything. She told you to be happy and not to look for her anymore. Xiao Noa. His voice was so sweet that I almost agreed. Then, I remembered that I was listening to a recording. Then, Zhuobufan's voice was calm. You don't know where she is, do you? She just called you and asked you to tell me that, didn't she? Han Fei was a little annoyed. Zhuobufan, are you so sure that Xiao Noa called me because of you? Are you sure that I don't have a place in Xiao Noa's heart? How do you know she didn't call me because she missed me? Zhuo Bufan remained silent. Zhuo Bufan, are you a modern man or not? In this society, the most volatile thing was love. Everyone was surrounded by countless temptations. If you didn't do anything, it would seem that your love was only her business. If it was any other girl, they would have run away countless times. Love needs to be managed and maintained. It can't stand any test at all. Do you understand? Han Fei, you're right, but Zhuo Bufan is really not a modern person. Zhuo Bufan remained silent. Han Fei said angrily, damn it, why am I telling you this? Scram as far as you can. What does your life or death have to do with me? Han Fei, where do you think Xiao Nua is now? Zhuo Bufan's voice was as cool as water. He was not affected by Han Fei's words at all, and there was no trace of anger in his voice. He understood Han Fei. I think Zhuo Bufan has always understood everyone. However, in this understanding and tolerance, there seemed to be a lack of love. Han Fei's voice also calmed down. He snorted and said, I also want to know. Zhuo Bufan sighed softly and said as if to himself, Xiaonua, oh Xiaonua, you little fool. Are you torturing yourself or me? Zhuo Bufan, come on. Have you been tortured? You and Xiaonua are together. What have you done for her? She knows everything about your preferences. Do you know her? She always eats porridge with you. Do you think she likes porridge so much? Xiaonua, she is a fool. As long as she likes to eat, why would I mind eating anything with her? Zhuo Bufan's voice finally sounded a little sad. Han Fei said mockingly, will a wise and intelligent person like Zhuo Bufan feel precious after losing him? I won't lose Xiaonua. I will never allow her to really leave me. No matter where she is in the world, I will definitely find her. Han Fei was silent for a few seconds and then sneered. If a person wants to hide, it will not be easy to find her. Zhuo Bufan, I don't have any hope for you. Moreover, even if you find her, I don't think you can make her happy. Han Fei, you and I both know that if there is one person in this world who can make Xiaonua happy, it will only be Zhuo Bufan. Zhuo Bufan, why are you so confident? A person can't only love one person in his life. She will forget you one day. I will find her before she forgets. Han Fei, next time she calls you, please help me tell her that I love her very much. I create obstacles for myself because I have nothing better to do. Whether you love her or not, you won't tell her yourself. Let me tell you, in this world, the one who loves Xiaonua the most and understands Xiaonua the most is me. I know Xiaonua is a kind, independent, optimistic, and confident girl, and I can give her practical help at work. I understand her feelings, understand her career, understand her likes and dislikes. These days, I've spent more time with her than you have with her, we don't know how close we are. God, it's such a long speech, it's making me dizzy. This Han Fei, did he want to record Zhuo Bufan's words or take the opportunity to confess? It was rare for Zhuo Bufan to interrupt someone else's words. Yes, but you lack fate. Goodbye. The call ended. After 3 seconds of silence, Han Fei's gentle voice said, Xiaonua, Zhuo Bufan's confidence is admirable, but in love, this kind of confidence and certainty is the most hurtful. Promise me, think about it carefully and make a choice for yourself, okay? Then, the recording slowly came to an end. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I listened to the recording several times. In this recording, Zhuo Bufan had only said 17 sentences, but Han Fei had said 66. Really, this Han Fei. I shook my head and sat down. Only then did I realize that I had been standing for a long time. Since the beginning of the recording, I hadn't done anything else, including sitting down. I smiled wryly and called Han Fei. Han Fei, I've finished listening to the recording. Han Fei said with a smile, are you going to give me a good evaluation? Are you going to take advantage of the situation, or are you going to take advantage of the situation? I only know that I have to fight for what I want. I can't think about anything else. I found it funny. Han Fei, you really aren't a gentleman, but a despicable person. I joked, how could I say that about you? Even if I had to say something, I would say that you're a successful businessman. You're good at seizing the opportunity to promote yourself. Then, did I succeed in my promotion? Ah. I remember that there's something I haven't done yet. I'll call you another day. I didn't know what to say to his joke, so I wanted to end the call. Han Fei said quietly, Xiao Nua, I'm not forcing you to answer. You don't have to be like this. I'm just suspecting that you've already gotten Zhuo Bufan's voice. I don't have any value to you anymore. Will you call me in the future? Chapter 202. 185, Mount Sinai. Moses and his people could not pass through the city of Marduk controlled by Usur, and they had been wandering in the mountains looking at the fertile plains for several months, constantly moving from one place to another, looking for water and food in the mountains and fields, living a very hard life. A road had now appeared between the Euphrates River crossing controlled by the kingdom of Babylon and the city of Marduk. Many expectant explorers came to this new city-state in search of wealth and dreams. There were also many merchants who organized convoys to send supplies back to the plains of Duk, and although the journey was difficult and dangerous, it was very profitable. The plains of Duk was like a new unknown world given by the gods, full of challenges and opportunities, and people came here in search of hope. At some point, there was a legend that a wanderer with nothing could even own a city in the plains of Duk, gaining wealth comparable to that of a king, and possibly receiving the blessings of the gods in the future. The migrants from the kingdom of Babylon naturally chose the city of Marduk, while the caravans went even further, crossing the trails trodden by carriages and pedestrians in the wilderness and doing business with the city of Salem. Salem traded with the kingdom of Babylon through the city of Marduk, and this was the result of Madanzo's discussion with Usur, which was beneficial to the development of both city-states. At present, the biggest enemy of Salem was the Assyrians in the north, and if the Assyrians advanced from the north to the south and occupied the entire plains of Duk, it would be difficult for the city of Marduk to gain a foothold. Usur also did not want to be enemies with Salem, and he was happy to see a barrier in the middle of the plains of Duk to block the strong enemies from the north, so that he would have more time to stabilize the city of Marduk. The fine iron and leather goods produced by Salem were also materials needed by the kingdom of Babylon, not to mention parangons. The mining skills of the town of Duk were taught by Amon to Link, and Link in turn taught them to the cavemen in the tribe, and now there was a group of excellent craftsmen in Salem who could not only smelt ores but also create all kinds of exquisite objects. However, there were restrictions on trade between the kingdom of Babylon and the city of Salem. For example, products such as fine iron could only be shipped out of the plains of Duk and were not allowed to be shipped in. Weapons, armor, warhorses, and other very important strategic supplies were not allowed to be sold to the city of Salem. If Salem needed these things, it would either have to build them itself or obtain them from other sources, and Amon had opened another trade route in the charcoal marsh, of course, to solve this problem. But even if that long trade route was opened, it would not be able to meet the urgent needs. Salem was understaffed and had many things to do, and it was impossible to use all of them to build war supplies. Before the road to the charcoal marsh was opened, Madanzo came up with another idea, which was to carry out a kind of smuggling trade. Madanzo was originally a smuggler of damask billets, so it was easy for him to instruct people in this business. Entering the wilderness to explore and hunt was full of danger, and naturally one had to carry weapons, armor, and horses. The personal equipment of those exploration teams and wandering hunters who went deep into the wilderness was not included in the trade restrictions. But a full set of fine weapons, armor, and warhorses was by no means affordable for the average person, and many exploration teams carried simple weapons and walked into the wilderness to try their luck. A trading firm in Marduk City provided loans to these people, and the money borrowed was used to buy warhorses and weapons designated by the trading firm. Who would borrow this money, and how would they pay it back in the future? There was no need to worry about this, as after entering the wilderness, someone would buy their weapons and warhorses at a high price, and after repaying the loan to the trading firm, they would still be able to make a profit, and there would be no need to venture deep into the wilderness. It was normal for explorers to lose their weapons and warhorses in the wilderness and jungle, sometimes because the road was difficult, sometimes because they encountered ferocious beasts, and sometimes even their own lives were lost. If they, luckily, escaped back from an expedition and returned to the trading firm to repay the loan, they would still be able to make a profit, and then continue to borrow to buy equipment before setting off again. It was in this way that Madanzo allowed the city of Salem to obtain a steady stream of strategic supplies. Borrowing from the trading firm was calculated according to time, and the wandering explorers who smuggled supplies in this way would not make money if they delayed too long, so they had to strive to go and return quickly and steal as many times as possible in the shortest possible time in order to earn more profit. The owner of the trading firm in Marduk City was also an old friend, the wealthy merchant of the city of Uruk, Neskatli. He not only made money by borrowing, but also by selling all kinds of strategic supplies, organizing caravans from all over the kingdom of Babylon to Marduk City, and had a pleasant cooperation with Madanzo. Due to the excellent operation of Neskatli's trading firm, the goods shipped, the customers attracted, and the taxes paid were all very high, promoting the prosperity and development of Marduk City, and was praised many times by the mayor of Marduk, Usser. When Neskatli came to Marduk City to inspect his own trading firm, Mayor Usser specially invited the wealthy merchant to a banquet and said that he would report Neskatli's achievements to the kingdom, and that he might be able to receive a noble title, as long as he continued to contribute to Marduk City. On the high slopes of the mountains, caravans and explorers could be seen going back and forth between Marduk City and Salem, but Moses and the others could not move forward, as they were bound by an oracle. They were not allowed to build statues for any other gods except Marduk. But they believed in their one and only God and accepted Allah's guidance in order to get here through all the hardships, and Moses and his people were naturally unwilling to accept this condition. At first, they prayed to the gods all night, and then they heard the voice of the oracle. Madanzo told them that this was the test of the gods, the last obstacle they had to overcome before returning home. The gods had given them confidence and courage, and now they needed to solve it with their own wisdom and strength. The implication was that Allah would not take them directly, and this time it was up to the people to find a way to get through it themselves. What should they do? From the top of the mountain, they could see the vast plains of Duk in the distance, but the city of Marduk was in front of them, and behind it was the Syrian desert. The food carried in Moses' spatial artifact had been exhausted, and Allah no longer performed miracles, so they could only pick wild fruits and catch prey in the mountains to fill their stomachs. The miners of Duk moved in the mountains in pursuit of prey and water, and when spring came, they finally stopped their weary footsteps for a while and found a valley on the edge of the mountains where they could stop. There was a thin spring on the hillside, forming a winding mountain stream through a valley sheltered from the wind and facing the sun. Moses took out the grain seeds he carried with him, ordered his people to cultivate the land by the mountain stream to plant crops, and built simple huts to live at the foot of the mountain. The people guarded the fields from being trampled by wild beasts and took turns to go hunting in the nearby mountains. The seeds had just sprouted, and there was still a long time before the harvest, and every day they had to go to the mountain stream to fetch water for irrigation and go into the mountains to hunt for food, so life was very difficult. Suffering was secondary, the most torturous thing was the feeling of not seeing hope. A clansman said to Moses, "You asked us to cultivate the fields and build huts. Do you want to settle here?" Looking around, there were no signs of human habitation. Not far from the foot of the mountain was a boundless desert. We were only guarding a small mountain stream. Living in this barren valley, we could only build the simplest thatched huts. If this is the case, it is better to stay in Amon's territory. Why did we leave in the first place? We have gone through so many hardships, and what we want is not today's result. Moses replied, "This is just a place where we stop temporarily. Spring is coming, we must sow in the autumn to have a harvest, and with food, we can survive the next winter and go further." A clansman asked again, "Temporarily? But how long are we going to wander here? Where is the God who guides us?" Moses advised, this is a test from God, and we have to overcome it ourselves. Sowing seeds here is for the future harvest, and building houses is so that everyone can rest better, and when the day comes when we embark on our journey again, we will have a better hope and future. Everyone asked, then can you tell us how long we are going to stay here? Moses did not answer this question, because he did not know the answer himself, but leaned on his iron staff and said, look at the ground under your feet, the broken barley is full of vitality, and look at the clouds in the sky, the changing patterns are always so beautiful and magical. If the heart is full of hope, even the sun on that desert is always so bright. In fact, Moses himself could have quietly bypassed the city of Marduk and entered the plains of Duk, and after crossing the Red Sea, he had already attained the 7th level of the power of 2 sides. Although Ammon had not yet given him the guidance of the power of origin, Moses was already a supreme mage and supreme warrior, and he could go anywhere he wanted. But Moses did not abandon his clansmen, he was their leader, and he had to fulfill his promise. At this time, Usur sent someone to find them again, and Usur's messenger told Moses, the great god Marduk has sent down another oracle. You are all the best craftsmen on the continent, and if you are willing to live in the city of Marduk and swear to worship the great god Marduk forever, you will have a happy and prosperous life. There are comfortable houses and beautiful girls in the city of Marduk, craftsmen's workshops have been prepared for you, and there is good wine by the workbench. Moses refused this request, but some people were already tempted in private. Instead of waiting aimlessly here, it was better to go to the city of Marduk and live a comfortable life. It was just that it was difficult to face the guidance of Allah like this, but the God had already said that they needed to find a way to get through the difficulties on their own. In that case, could they also accept Usur's conditions? If they gave up persevering, the benefits were right in front of them, and they had suffered enough for a long time. Moses was aware of the thoughts of many of his clansmen, and he was also trying to get out of the predicament. He sent the 12 judges to climb the various high slopes near the plains of Duk to observe the terrain and check if there were secret passages to pass through, and then return to the station to discuss countermeasures. After the 12 judges left, Moses climbed alone to the highest mountain next to the station, called Mount Sinai. Moses prayed on the top of Mount Sinai for 3 days and 3 nights, calling in his heart, Allah, my one and only God. Please give us true guidance. I do not ask you to move the mountains and fill the seas so that we can reach our homeland directly, I just want you to show us the right faith so that we will not get lost in the journey. 3 days passed, and Mount Sinai was silent. Moses was worried about the situation of his clansmen and was finally ready to go back, so he stood up with a long sigh. He was about to go down the mountain with his iron staff when he suddenly heard Allah's voice again, Moses, you could have passed through the city of Marduk long ago, why are you still here? Moses hurriedly turned and knelt down, prostrating himself to the invisible God in the void. My God, you have finally spoken. Marduk sent down an oracle and made us swear that we would not build statues for any god other than him, and this oath has stopped our clansmen in their tracks. Allah asked in return, did I ask you to build a statue for me? If you really wanted to build a statue for me, what would it look like? Moses froze, and it took a long time before he suddenly understood. I understand what you mean, not building a statue does not shake our faith. Allah asked again, then why haven't you led your clansmen into the plains of Duk yet? Marduk is not an obstacle. Moses sighed. But the clansmen don't understand this, and even I am not sure. It would be disrespectful to you to agree to such a condition, and the clansmen are afraid of losing the guidance of God and even of your revenge. My God! Are you really unwilling to show your face to your people and not want us to build a statue for you? Allah replied, yes, I just gave you a promise to strengthen your faith in your hearts, and you do not need and will not be allowed to build a statue for me. If you ever see my face, it is also a secret that you must keep strictly. Because from the beginning, I have made such an agreement with my clansmen. Today these agreements will be made clear, and you will bring them back to announce them. Moses nodded quickly and said, okay, please make an agreement with me and my clansmen. Allah said solemnly, you must not have any other gods but me. Otherwise you will lose my guidance, that is the first agreement. You must not build a tangible statue for God. If that is the case, future generations may forget the guidance of faith and only pray to the idol on the altar. That is the second agreement. These two agreements are enough to get you out of your current predicament. That is my request and my promise." Moses kissed the dirt and said, "Thank you, my God." Allah added, "You must not act in my name, and everyone must be responsible for their own choices." That is the third agreement. The clansmen work hard, and after 6 days of work they should rest for a day, and they should not be forced to work again. That is the fourth agreement. You must respect your parents, and never forget who brought you into this world and gave you life. That is the fifth agreement. Moses prostrated himself on the ground and replied, "I have remembered all of this." Allah continued, "I have given you the guidance of power, and at the same time you must understand the various trials of this world, the tests of fate throughout, and there are 5 more warnings after returning home. Do not kill innocent people, do not deprive others of their lives for money or selfish desires, do not steal, do not bear false witness against others, and do not covet what does not belong to you. You must remember these agreements. The city of Salem has preserved the land and minds of your ancestors for you, and you must live in harmony with the people there, and do not think that everything there is due to my promise." Moses kept in mind Allah's words, which were the 10 agreements that God had made with him and his people, and later became known as the 10 Commandments. After saying this, Allah ordered again, "You will convey my agreement to the people, and if they are willing to abide by it, then I will fulfill my promise and continue to guide them. After all this is done, you will come to see me on Mount Sinai." Moses walked down Mount Sinai with the agreement with Allah in mind, past the spring where the stream originated from halfway up the mountain, and ran briskly along the mountain stream. He could not wait to tell the good news to the people, and when he arrived at the place where the people lived, it was already dark, but the scene in front of him surprised him. Several large fires were lit beside the open space in the middle of the huts, which was originally used as a wheat field after the autumn harvest, and now there was a shining golden bull in the middle of the open space. Some people were dancing around the golden bull, and others were lined up in a circle and praying to the golden bull. Moses shouted, "What are you doing? Where did this golden bull come from?" The shout was accompanied by magic, and had the power to shock the soul and wake people from their stupor. The dancers stopped, and the prayers rose, with expressions of bewilderment, alarm, and defiance. Joshua flashed out of the shadow of the hut, grabbed Moses' sleeve, and said, "You are finally back. Something big happened here in the past 3 days, and a God showed a miracle." He whispered what had happened. The 12 judges who protected the people left the camp, and the leader Moses also climbed Mount Sinai. The people seemed to have lost their backbone, and even the sound of the wind blowing through the treetops at night became so frightening, and they spent the first night in fear and uneasiness. In fact, most of them were very strong, comparable to the soldiers of any regular army on the road, but for the first time in a long time, they lost the protection of a stronger force, and for a moment, they were a little panicked. On the first day after Moses left, a disturbing situation occurred. The prey in the nearby mountains had disappeared without a trace, and the people who went hunting in the mountains did not even catch a rabbit. All of them returned empty-handed, and for the first time, everyone went to bed hungry. They had eaten up the food they carried, and the last batch had been sown as seeds. Chapter 203. 186. The face of the gods. For a moment the people did not know how to answer, and a child's voice cried out, "We have one God, and we have accepted his guidance, please do not come to shake our faith." The speaker was David Solomon. The voice of Bakri sneered, "What has that God given you, food, hope, or protection? Since that is the case, why do you suffer through this long night in hunger and cold? I can give you what he can give, and I can give what he cannot. As long as you worship me as a god and make an oath to sacrifice to me." David replied, "We don't need you, please leave." But then another shouted, "Bakri, what makes you say such a thing? Please prove yourself." The voice of Bakri replied, "Then I will prove it to you, and then I will wait for your reply. Everyone is hungry, isn't it? After dawn, the dew on the blades of grass will become a delicacy. This is a miracle I have bestowed upon you." The next morning, when they came out of the hut, they were surprised to find that the dew on the blades of grass had fallen to the ground, turning into many small frost-like balls. Someone picked it up and put it in his mouth to taste, and it tasted like a delicious snack. "What is this?" There was a lot of discussion. No one had ever seen such a thing, but it was indeed edible and delicious. The dew turned into a snack, neither too much nor too little, just enough for everyone in the camp to eat their fill for the day. It was rare that people could get delicious food without working or hunting, like a drowning man grasping at a life-saving straw in despair. The people did not sleep well that night, all waiting to see if the voice of the god would appear again. Late at night, the voice of Bakri sounded again, "Miners of Duk, I give you food and hope, and when the sun rises tomorrow, the dew on the blades of grass will still turn into a delicacy. I will also give you a bowl made of gold, a symbol of my totem, and you can pass through the city of Marduk while carrying this golden bowl. When you reach your hometown, put it on the altar and build a shrine for me. Tonight, light a fire, dance around the golden bowl, and worship it. I can hear your prayers." On the third day, Moses still had not returned, and the 12 judges were still nowhere to be seen. Some people were discussing whether Moses and the 12 judges had left on their own after receiving the power bestowed by Allah. But he left the other clansmen here. The dewdrops on the leaves of the grass turned into small frost-like snacks that tasted delicious. In the middle of the open space between the thatched cottages, a shining little golden cow appeared. It took 2 strong miners to lift it. Even this much gold was a fortune, not to mention that it was the idol of God, a miracle performed by Barker. Joshua, David, and the others persuaded everyone to reject the temptation, but more people were tempted. Since Bakri could give the food and blessings that Allah could give, why not worship this god? What's more, Allah no longer helped them pass through Marduk city, and everything needed to be figured out by the clansmen themselves, so this was also one of the ways. The people gathered together to discuss, and if Moses and the 12 judges did not return, everyone would follow Bakri's instructions. That night, the people who had eaten their fill and rested for a day came to the open space of the wheat field. Some lit a fire and began to dance around the golden cow, while others knelt in a circle and prayed to the golden cow. If they had been to Link's cavemen tribe a few years ago and seen how the cavemen danced in front of the big cave with a fire, they would have found that this scene was very similar to a spontaneous primitive tribal religious ritual. If Aman had been here, he would have also discovered that this was also a ritual to summon the gods to descend, allowing Bakri's incarnation to attach to the golden cow. But the ritual was not completed, because Moses rushed back and awakened the clansmen with a shout, interrupting what everyone was doing. When Joshua finished telling the story, Moses stepped forward angrily, swung his cane and smashed the golden cow into pieces, and shouted at the crowd, "Have you forgotten your faith? Have you forgotten the one God? Have you forgotten who guided us through so many hardships? This is a betrayal, a disgrace." Some lowered their heads in shame, while others argued in a low voice, "Bakri gave us food so that we would not starve. We should thank all those who helped us in our predicament." Moses shouted, "If that's the case, what did Allah give you? The gods do not ask for your gratitude, they only want you to see the faith in your hearts. You just ate for 2 days, and you forgot everything? Food without work, is this the guidance you are looking forward to? Can we and our children and grandchildren always pick dew from the grass to fill our stomachs? We did not give up hope in the face of so many hardships and threats. Did we change our faith just because of a few days of food and the temptation of a golden cow? Shouldn't we be ashamed of this? The evil god Bakri gave you food, but don't forget, Allah also showed such miracles and gave you more. Do you understand the meaning of the one God? The prey in the mountains disappeared for no reason, and I just sensed that someone cast a spell to drive away the aura left by the living beings nearby. The so-called evil god who gave you food is the one who took it away, and yet you dance and worship him, betraying your own perseverance. How can you receive the true guidance of the light by doing this?" Seeing that Moses had returned, many people already felt ashamed and regretful, and when they came back to their senses, they felt a little dazed these 2 days, as if they had been bewitched by something. When Moses told the people that someone had cast a spell to drive away the aura of the living beings nearby, it dawned on everyone that Bakri had deliberately made everyone hungry before showing a miracle, and fortunately Moses returned in time. Another person muttered in a low voice, "But Bakri said that we could cross Marduk city by carrying that golden cow, and now that you have broken the golden cow, what else can we do?" Moses's anger had not subsided, and he said, "I accept the guidance of God to tell everyone how to return home and protect our faith. God has never asked us to do anything, but today it is time to make an agreement, and I have brought back the 10 agreements between God and our people. This is God's promise and God's help, so melt the fragments of this golden cow into a golden plate and inscribe the agreement with God on the golden plate. God has given me a tent, and we will use it to place the golden plate inscribed with the agreement." Moses waved his iron staff, and a luxurious tent appeared in the middle of the open space. It was the golden tent that the Lion King had used to entertain Ammon, and Ammon had used to entertain Goliath, Celia, and the others. He cast magic to melt and condense the fragments of the golden cow into a golden plate, on which appeared the 10 agreements Allah had made with his people on Mount Sinai, and he asked Joshua to read them aloud in front of everyone. The people who had come to their senses again prostrated themselves towards the golden plate in the tent, expressing their gratitude to Allah, and at the same time repenting for their actions just now. Ammon controlled the crystal shuttle and watched this scene with Madanzo, Link, and Gabriel from the clouds. Madanzo curled his lips and said, "Ammonius, guess what I thought of? The child whose parents have worked so hard to raise almost called someone else father and mother over a piece of candy." Gabriel interrupted, "If that's the case, I'm afraid the parents are also responsible, but such children are really unlikable, and your analogy may not be very appropriate." Ammon said lightly, "It's not appropriate, they still don't know what faith is, but they have experienced too much suffering for too long, and people are most easily lost in despair. Today I have made an agreement, and it is their own choice whether to abide by it or not. I only give my own promise." Moses is a very good leader and guide. Link said, "We have just cleared the traces of magic in the surroundings, and the frightened prey has returned. This Bakri's technique is very clever. Ammonius, have you heard of him?" Ammon frowned and said, "I've never heard of such a god. Have you heard of him?" Madanzo slapped his forehead. "I've vaguely heard of him once, when Aesop was telling a story. There is an empire of Baz far east of the continent, and the people there seem to believe in a god called Bakri. But the empire of Baz is far away from Assyria and Babylon, and has hardly had any dealings with this place for hundreds of years, so people know very little about it." Ammon wondered, why would a god believed in by a distant empire appear here? Not far ahead is the city of Marduk, and he can actually promise to pass by carrying the totem that symbolizes him. Gabriel suddenly said, "The Duk miners who accept the guidance of Allah will go to the city of Salem, which believes in Ammonius." This sentence made Ammon suddenly realize, and he nodded repeatedly and said, "So that's how it is really possible. Even if Bakri is not another incarnation of Marduk, the relationship between the two gods is by no means simple." What did Ammon think of? He thought of himself. Was the Allah that the Duk miners believed in the same as the Ammonius that the people of Salem believed in? This question was not easy to answer. There must be a difference between the two. But they were all different identities of Ammon, and only Ammon himself could clearly understand the relationship. Marduk was also a remarkable genius who did not accept the guidance of the divine clan back then. Just like Ammon today, he explored the path of the origin power on his own, and went further than Ammon today, not only becoming a true god who transcended eternal life, but also becoming one of the two main gods after joining the Anunnaki divine clan. Since Ammon could incarnate as Ammonius and Allah, then why couldn't Marduk, whose achievements far surpassed his, incarnate as god Marduk and Bakri at the same time? Judging from what happened today, there must be a special relationship between Marduk and Bakri, and it was likely that they were different identities of the same god. If this was the case, this great god Marduk was very interesting. He gave the Duk miners a very special test and temptation, and only a god could use such ingenious means. The miners of Duk, the descendants of the sinners in the War of the Gods, and the natives of the plains of Duk, had now become the touchstone of the various gods. The significance of the struggle surrounding them had gone beyond the miners themselves, and it had another important symbol. Madanzo let out a long breath and said, "Perhaps the gods have underestimated Marduk. I am afraid he is not only the main god believed in by the kingdom of Babylon, but he also failed in front of Ammonius. David is a good boy, but unfortunately he is still too young, and the leader of these people, Moses, does not yet know what choice he will face." Ammon looked at Moses from the clouds and said, "He has conveyed my agreement to the people, and when the final mission is completed, I will tell him everything. We will keep watch tonight and see if that Bakri will appear again." On the night that Moses broke the golden bull and cast it into a golden plate, Bakri's voice never appeared again, and the next day, no dew on the grass turned into deserts again. People walked out of their houses and looked at the fields beside the stream, where the wheat seedlings had grown to knee-high, and David suddenly shouted, "Look, there's a rabbit over there. The prey that was driven away by the evil god has returned." The people gathered around Moses again and asked, "God has given guidance and an agreement, we can already pass through Marduk city, when will we leave?" Moses pointed to the wheat and said, "When the 12 judges return, and after the autumn harvest, we will be ready to leave. Do you see the hope of sowing? Pray to God with me." The 12 judges returned one after another, and the news they brought was mixed. Looking at the plains of Duk from the various peaks, it was indeed a fertile field, with attractive figs, pomegranates, and wild grapes growing in the fields, very suitable for reclamation and farming, and would be a home flowing with milk and honey. But there was no secret passage that could pass through the area controlled by Marduk city, which had nearly 10,000 inhabitants and nearly 1,000 warriors, among whom there was no shortage of mighty highland giants. The 12 judges returned to the camp, each frowning, but when they saw the golden-topped tent and the golden plate inscribed with the agreement, they all smiled again. When everyone was gathered, Moses said, "I will once again climb Mount Sinai to listen to the voice of God. All of you prepare to leave, it will not be long before we depart. I can tell God with relief that no one of my people has been left behind." Moses climbed Mount Sinai again with his iron staff, crossing streams and climbing cliffs, and it took him a whole day to reach the top. Looking around, the clouds drifted under the blue sky, and the golden sunset glow was spectacular, but there was no sign of Allah. He knelt in the sunset and began to pray, and soon heard the voice of God, "Moses, I am gratified that as their leader, you have not abandoned any of your people. Can I ask you 2 questions, please answer them by gazing into your heart." Moses replied piously, "My God, please ask." "Allah, you once made a vow to me, my God, Savior of hope. I call out to you, asking you to hear my voice. Do not let the flame of hope be extinguished again, guide my people back to their homeland, even if it means sacrificing all my body, mind and life, as long as they return to the land of Duk. Is that right?" Moses, "Yes, this is the vow I made to you on the way out of Igut." "Allah, you also once said to your people, the body is the courtyard where the soul resides, and the foothold is the home of the body and mind. If the body and mind lose their support, they do not know where the soul is, do not know what they are pursuing, that is true homelessness. Is that right?" Moses, "Yes, this is what my father once said to me, and I have always kept it in mind." Allah sighed. "Is this the belief you guard? Even if it means sacrificing yourself for it?" Moses nodded. "Yes. Allah, if this is the case, I can rest assured. I want to tell you one thing, and now I want you to make a sincere choice. If you want your people to return safely to their homeland, and henceforth get rid of their status as sinners and no longer be harassed by the evil gods, you need to pay a price. Are you willing to do so?" Moses, "I am willing, may I ask what that price is?" Allah replied slowly, "The price is yourself, the leader who leads your people. You cannot enter the plains of Duk, and can only watch your people and your descendants live in that homeland from afar. Don't ask me why, if you have to make this choice, will you agree? I will not force you, I just want a clear answer." Moses straightened his body from his kneeling position, opened his arms to the sky and said, "My God, why have you given me this fate? It was impossible to tell whether Allah's voice was happy or sad, and he still asked slowly, I have already said, don't ask me why. Moses covered his cheeks with both hands. If fate is so cruel and I have to make this choice, I am willing to stay on my own, but I am not satisfied with this arrangement of fate. Allah said, I am not satisfied either, may I ask if you have made a choice, and will not go back on it? Moses, I have made a choice, and I will not go back on it. But my God, please tell me the reason. Allah, Moses, you can look up now and you will see my face. Moses released his hands from his cheeks and raised his tear-stained eyes, but he froze and said in amazement, You? Why is it you? Ammon finally showed up and stood in front of Moses, pointing to the iron staff by his hand and saying, The staff I gave you, you should be more than familiar with it. When you were in the empire of Igut, didn't you hear what weapon Supreme General Ammon used on the battlefield? Moses, it's a branch, I should have thought of it. Ammon laughed, It doesn't matter if you thought of it or not, today you have finally seen my face clearly, does it make any difference to your beliefs whether I am Ammon or not? Moses looked at him, and after a long time, as if suddenly waking up, he bent down and kissed the soil and said, My God, it makes no difference, I don't know how to thank you for everything you have done. From the moment you took away the whip that lashed me, you have been guiding me and my people, and only you know us so well and can do all this. Ammon sat down. Now that you have seen me, do you have any wishes or requests? Chapter 204 187, It's all Murin's fault. Ammon looked up at the clouds in the dusk and said, I have to start from a long time ago. It has something to do with the origin of the miners in Duk, and the battle of the gods in Anunnaki. He told a long story to Moses, and at the end he mentioned the bet between Enlil and goddess Murin. If Murin could not win this bet, even if the Duk miners could pass through the city of Marduk, they would still be blocked or even hunted down by the divine emissaries sent by Enlil. The gods also had to abide by their oaths, and if Murin won, the Duk miners would henceforth get rid of their status as sinners, but this was secondary. The most important thing was that Enlil would no longer make things difficult for them. Ammon himself was not afraid of Enlil, but he had also seen the divine emissaries under Enlil, such as Bright Moon Night. If Enlil really sent an emissary to attack Moses and the others, it would indeed be impossible to guard against. Now that Moses had made a choice and Murin had won the bet, the Duk miners would no longer be harassed and punished by the Anunnaki divine clan, and they would only have to face the trials and tribulations of the human world. Although this bet was not proposed by Ammon, and he was also very disgusted with Enlil, he also hoped that Murin would win, but it required Moses to make a sacrifice. Moses' sacrifice was not without reward, and Ammon finally said, Now you have a chance to accept the guidance of the Anunnaki divine clan, learn the secret of becoming a god, and become an emissary beyond mortals. Moses froze for a moment before replying, My God, are you not willing to continue to guide me? Ammon smiled and said, Of course I am willing, as long as your faith is firm. Moses, you have made 10 agreements with me, and I have engraved them in my soul. Of course I will not join the Anunnaki divine clan, why are you telling me this? Ammon stood up. I'm only telling you the reason for all of this. It's clear that you've made the other choice, so I'll guide you to the source of your power. It's time for you to leave your tribe. Come with me. Moses also stood up and asked, Where are you taking me? Ammon, first go to Murin's divine palace to see Murin, and then go to a place called the Garden of Eden to make it an ideal home. Moses asked in confusion, Why do you want to see Murin? I've already rejected her. Ammon explained, Guiding you to join the God system is not a request. It is a kind intention and reward, because the sacrifice you made helped your people. You can choose not to accept, but you should also thank. Whether you like Murin or not, you have to learn to look at a god seriously. Besides, you have another task, which is to learn how to build a divine palace. Our divine palace is the Garden of Eden. As he spoke, Ammon waved his hand, and a force wrapped around Moses. The space around them seemed to shift, and they rose into the air without moving. Moses hurriedly said, Are we leaving now? I have one last thing to do. Ammon, of course you have to go and say hello, I'll send you down the mountain. Moses bowed and said, My God, please send me to the mountainside first. Ammon nodded, and without any visible movement, the two of them quickly moved to the mountainside and came near the spring where the stream originated. The space that had shifted suddenly merged with the surrounding light and shadow, and Moses's body relaxed and stood on the ground again. He exclaimed, My God, how did you know I was coming here? Ammon smiled slightly. Because I know you, let's do it. Moses waved his iron staff and struck it heavily on the rocks beside the spring. There was no scene of stone debris flying, but a low buzzing sound with a strange tremor impacted into the depths of the mountain. This was the mining technique of Duk, performed with vigorous magical power. Several thin cracks suddenly appeared on the rocks beside the spring at the same time, and a stream of water washed the gravel out, doubling the flow of the spring. The wheat seedlings at the foot of the distant mountain were about to head, and it was the time when irrigation was most needed. The original thin mountain stream would not be able to meet the needs of irrigating such a large field. Moses opened the spring to draw more spring water down, which was the last thing he did before leaving his people. That night, the sleeping tribesmen once again heard the voice in their souls. It was not Bakri, but their leader, Moses. My people, God has summoned me on Mount Sinai, and I will leave with God. Joshua will be your new leader, and the 12 judges will continue to protect the people as they move forward. There are many dangers ahead, but do not give up hope. You will return to your home, build it and protect it, do not break your promise with God, and most importantly, understand the true meaning of a home. Moses left and never returned, and he ordered Joshua, the oldest of the people, to be the new leader. Taking one last look at the camp of his people from above the clouds, Moses asked, My God, will I never see them again? Although close at hand, Ammon's voice sounded in his soul, That's not for sure. If one of them can receive my guidance in the future, you can meet them in the Garden of Eden, and you will be the messenger to guide them. As for the plains of Duk, if one day you no longer worry that Enlil will harm your people, then you can naturally go. You have no agreement with Enlil. Moses asked somewhat doubtfully, No longer worry that Enlil will harm your people? Ammon said with a faint smile, Even gods who transcend eternal life will fall. You don't have to think too much for the time being, just build your own Garden of Eden. 3 days later, Ammon appeared with Moses on the majestic rolling mountains of the Sia Plateau, which was so steep that there was almost no way to climb it. Although it was summer, the wind was cold at high altitudes, and huge glaciers could be seen from time to time on the snowline. The rocks at high altitudes had been eroded by snow and glaciers for many years, and many places were already very brittle, and a large piece of gravel would collapse with a forceful stomp. Not to mention people, even the footprints of animals were hard to see. Between the two huge mountains, there was a vast open area where cold winds blew all year round. The crushed stones were covered with snow that looked like ice crystals. It was extremely desolate as far as the eye could see. Only moss-like plants grew in the dark corners. Occasionally, there were some sparse and strange shrubs in the low-lying areas that were sheltered from the wind. Ammon stopped here, and Moses asked in surprise, Is this the place where the divine palace of Murin is? How can it be so desolate? Ammon explained, The gods do not have to live on earth, but they will also build palaces on earth for the emissaries who receive guidance to live and train, and when they are injured, they can also recuperate in such a place. The divine palace is invisible to ordinary people, unless the door is open for you to enter, but your current achievements are still a little short of that, and it will be difficult for you to discover its existence. Murin should know that we are coming, and you will be able to see a miracle right away, and in the future, you will also have to create such a miracle for yourself. Before he could finish his sentence, a door suddenly appeared in the wilderness. It was an arched door woven by green ivy. Through this arched door, one could see another strange world. The green grass spread out like a shade, dotted with all kinds of flowers. There were clear streams between the rolling hillsides, and in the distance was a beautiful mountain, and at the foot of the mountain was a gorgeous palace. Ammon pulled the stunned Moses through the door, and when Moses looked back in surprise, the ivy-wrapped door had disappeared, and he was standing in a vast, evergreen wilderness. Aman explained again, this is a space that uses the elemental energy of the plateau and the mountains to operate with magic, like another world. But we are still in the same place, still standing on the Saya Plateau, but this place is separated from the outside world by magic. It was also the first time that Aman had come to the divine palace of the gods, but he had the experience of entering the Ennead in Schrödinger's spiritual imprint, so he was not as surprised as Moses. Murin was a goddess who loved beauty, and her divine palace was filled with beautiful and delicate exotic flowers and plants from all over the continent. The so-called divine palace did not refer to a palace, but to a space like this. Murin was standing by a stream, holding an ivy staff in her hand, wearing a tight golden dress and a crown of flowers on her head. She was smiling at Aman and Moses who were walking in the distance, her elf-maid Shubra standing beside her. Moses also grew up in the town of Duk, and he had entered the shrine of Murin countless times since he was a child. Today, he finally saw a living god for the first time, and it turned out to be such a charming and moving girl. For a moment, he could not connect her with the solemn and cold stone statue on the altar. His feelings were complicated when he saw Murin. The goddess was once the patron saint of the Duk miners, but the town of Duk along with 2,000 people had disappeared in the flood. Now the surviving people no longer believed in the goddess, but Aman had brought him here, and the shrine of Ammonius and Murin had reappeared in the city of Salem. When Aman came, he told Moses that whether he liked her or not, he had to learn to face a god. Moses followed Aman to Murin and finally bowed to her. Aman said with a smile, "Yun Nam Na, I have brought Moses, you have won the bet with Enrol." Moses, who had his head lowered, was stunned. He did not expect Aman to address Murin like that, and then he heard the voice of the goddess. The lost lamb of those years has finally found its grassland, and it is still on the same land. Moses, I want to thank you, and I will guide you to join the Anunnaki divine clan, become an emissary of the gods, and obtain the secret of eternal life. Moses replied, "Thank you, goddess. But I have my God, and I already have the guidance of faith in my heart." Murin glanced at Aman, walked over, put her arm around Aman, and said, "This is just a promise, not a request, and if you change your mind in the future, you can join the Anunnaki divine clan at any time. Since you have no intention of accepting this invitation, why did you come here today?" Moses replied, "First, to thank you in person for making such a promise, although I did not ask for it. Second, to visit your divine palace. My God wants to build his own divine palace, and has ordered me to be in charge of the matters there." Murin said to the elf-maid Shubra, "Show Moses around, and tell him about the mysteries of building a divine palace. But with his achievements, there are still some things that he cannot do." Aman explained, "The place I want to build is called the Garden of Eden, and the most important work will be done by myself. After opening up an independent space, the gardens and palaces in the divine palace will still need to be built by the disciples, which will be the place where they will stay and train on earth, and the process of building is also to find the home in their hearts." Shubra led Moses into the distance, and Murin put her cheek against Aman's shoulder and said sweetly, "This is your first time coming to my rose garden, why don't you visit our palace first?" 7 days later, Aman and Moses left Yun Namna's rose garden and flew in the clouds over the Saya Plateau. Aman asked, "How do you feel these days in Murin's divine palace?" Moses sighed, "It's really a divine palace on earth, I never even dreamed that there would be such a place. Shubra is beautiful and gentle, I have never seen such a good girl. No matter what I ask, she answers very patiently, and sometimes she personally demonstrates to me." Aman couldn't help but laugh, "I didn't ask you about that, but what did you learn?" Moses sighed again, "I really did not expect that Shubra has already mastered the 9th level of the power of origin, and in the human world, she is equivalent to a god. We also competed in magic power, but it felt strange. Her achievements are much higher than mine, and she has mastered many means that I can't use, but in terms of pure strength, she doesn't exceed me by much, and she is not good at fighting." Aman laughed, "Practicing the power of origin, pursuing the realm of endless growth in the human world, and eventually becoming a god who transcends eternal life, is not for the sake of fighting. Power grows with the mind, and talent varies from person to person. Shubra takes care of the rose garden for you Namna, she is not a warrior, but your experience is different. But your experience is different. You've walked this path that I've guided you to this point, and you've encountered so many hardships. Naturally, your magic power is much stronger. Moses asked again, so in the divine clan, is there an oracle who is particularly good at fighting? Aman replied, of course there is. In the Ennead divine clan, the cat goddess Batet was very good at fighting, and Enril has a subordinate called Bright Moon Knight, who is not only good at assassination, but also has mastered a kind of explosive power of transformation, and is very strong in fighting. You must be careful when you encounter such an opponent, don't think that everyone is as gentle and cute as Shubra. Moses, Shubra is the first oracle I have seen with my own eyes, she is good at awakening the power of living beings, with a feeling like a spring breeze. Aman suddenly frowned, there's a tail. Moses was stunned, Shubra doesn't have a tail, but her ears are a bit sharp, and the color of her pupils is not quite the same. Aman glared at him, I didn't say Shubra, there is a tail behind us, we are being followed. Moses looked back subconsciously, who would follow us? Why can't I see it? Aman, don't look back, of course you can't see it, if it wasn't for the shape of a cloud when the wind blew through, even I wouldn't have noticed it. As soon as we came out of Murin's divine technique, we may have been targeted. Don't panic, see who it is, and take him down and ask him what he is trying to do. Aman did not change his speed and continued to fly forward, but quietly took out the shadow-chasing lamp. He had once given this magical artifact to Link, and when the clansmen entered the plains of Duk, he took it back this time. This object came from the collection of the Temple of Isis and was originally kept by High Priest Julian. When Julian sent people to hunt down Aman, he gave it to his men, but it was obtained by Aman. Link had inherited Crazy Ol's crafting skills, and when he took charge of this magical artifact, he had refined it again, and now its tracking effect was even more amazing. But this object was used for tracking after all, and Aman was now being tracked. He quietly took out the shadow-chasing lamp and flew down, making a turn in the air and disappearing behind a huge mountain peak. A gust of wind swirled away, and the invisible tracker also bypassed the mountain peak. After an unknown amount of time, Aman flew back from the other side of the mountain peak with Moses. It turned out that they had made a big circle around the mountain peak and returned to the place where the tracker had passed. The shadow-chasing lamp glowed, and a person appeared in the light. This person was a young man with fair skin and looked very young. His facial features were like perfect marble carvings, but his eyes showed a look of resentment. He wore a robe as soft as clouds and held an emerald green bamboo cane in his hand, the top of which was wrapped with a lifelike snake sculpture. Aman did not know this person, but suddenly remembered seeing this snake cane in a mural in a certain shrine in the kingdom of Babylon, and he knew who he was. This person was Murin's ex-husband, Dum's. Wasn't he sent to the underworld by Murin's messengers? Dum's sister, Peloponnes, had once come to Aman on his behalf, trying to capture Aman and send him to the underworld in exchange for Dum's, but Murin stopped her. Dum's had already escaped from the underworld, so why would he appear here and secretly follow Aman? Aman could not help but frown, feeling that things were a little troublesome. He took out a shuttle and a taroculus and handed them to Moses, saying, leave this place as soon as possible. Link and Madanzo are still waiting for you in the mountains of the Euphrates Valley. This taroculus records the place you need to go to, and there is also the blueprint of the Garden of Eden inside. I'll come after I settle something. Moses was a little worried and asked, who is following you? Don't you need my help? Aman shook his head, I don't need your help. He is Murin's ex-husband, Dum's. I'm afraid he has some personal problems to solve with me in private. Moses did not say anything more after hearing this, so he immediately launched the shuttle and flew away. It was Murin's ex-husband who was looking for Aman. These were personal matters that could not be discussed clearly, so it was better not to ask. At this time, another whirlwind blew out from the mountain peak. Dum's also quietly went around, only to see a person suddenly launch the shuttle and flew away, while another person stood high in the sky with his hands behind his back. Dums did not know whether he should immediately chase after them. At this time, he heard Amon's voice. "Dums, why did you chase me all the way here? What's the matter?" Chapter 205. 188. Snake Guide. Amon shook his head very frankly. "I don't know you, I've only seen the snake staff in your hand in the mural in the shrine. The god Dums painted on the mural doesn't look like you at all, it's very ugly, but the snake staff is the same." Dums approached slowly and pointed the snake staff at Amon. "Since you know me, how dare you speak like this? Do you know who I am?" Amon continued to shake his head. "I didn't know before, I thought you were a god, but later I learned that you are a demigod who has mastered the 9th level, a divine emissary of the Anunnaki divine clan, but I still don't know what you do, I only know that you were once the husband of Murin. We have never dealt with each other, why are you looking for me?" Dums shouted, "You still have the face to mention Murin in front of me. We have never dealt with each other, but that doesn't mean there is no hatred between you and me. If you want to blame someone, blame her, it's all Murin's fault." Amon kept shaking his head. "I have nothing to blame Murin for, I just came out of Murin's divine palace, and I didn't hear that she caused any trouble." The resentment in Dums' eyes grew stronger, and he said angrily, "You came out of Murin's divine palace? Do you know where I came from?" Amon finally nodded. "I know, you came out of Queen Kella's underworld, congratulations on your successful escape. Last time, your sister Peloponnes came to me, just to save you, and it seems that she really did." As soon as Amon mentioned the name Peloponnes, Dums seemed to be provoked by something, and he shouted angrily, "It was you who caused her to suffer in the underworld." Waving the bamboo staff in his hand, countless shadows and dust-like mist appeared in the air, quickly condensing into a 100-foot-long giant snake, which opened its mouth and pounced towards Amon. Before the giant snake even got close, the air was filled with the smell of blood, mixed with a strange fragrance. This smell was poisonous and could make people fall into a trance. Amon had long been on guard. An invisible spatial force isolated the invasion of the poisonous aura. He waved his hand in the air and summoned the Eye of Sealing. He swung it forward fiercely, and a huge cross-shaped sword appeared in the air and slashed at the snake. The surrounding space seemed to shrink and collapse towards a single point. A force pushed everything towards the center. The cross-shaped longsword and the giant serpent's light and shadow were crushed and annihilated at the same time, as if they had disappeared into the collapsed space. Dums was also pushed forward by the power of space contraction, his hair flying and his long robe dancing. He gripped his bamboo staff and stabilized his body in the air, appearing both elegant and mighty. However, he immediately thought that something was wrong and hurriedly shook his bamboo staff again. The snake sculpture on the staff suddenly came to life, transforming into a flying snake that rapidly expanded in the air and coiled around him, opening its mouth to bite. This time it was not an illusory snake made of magic power, but a real snake. Amon did not put on a stance like him, taking out his staff and fighting elegantly across the air. At the moment when the space collapsed, Amon's figure was also pushed forward. He took advantage of the momentum and flew forward, passing through the sword and the giant serpent that had just been shattered, and suddenly shot out amidst the chaotic aura, swinging his fist towards Dums' face. As a divine emissary of the Anunnaki divine clan for many years, Dums had never seen such a fighting style at all. Amon did not look like a high and mighty god, this was simply a street fight in the mortal world. Fortunately, he reacted quickly and struck out with the spirit snake staff that he had refined for many years and was connected to his mind. If Amon was bitten by this snake, no matter how strong his soul was, his physical body would be paralyzed for a moment, and he would fall directly from the clouds. If he was entangled by the snake, then the power of his soul would also be imprisoned, and he would be captured alive by Dums. If it were any other god, no one would be willing to fight in such a way, and they would definitely fly back and then get into a stance to calmly use all kinds of means. But Amon didn't dodge at all. As soon as the snake flew out, he arrived. With a flip of his wrist, his fist turned into a golden palm, and he grabbed the snake's head. The edge of his palm barely grazed the snake's fangs. He held the snake's upper and lower jaws together, and at the same time, grabbed the snake's body with his other hand. This spirit snake was connected to Dum's body and soul, and as soon as it was caught, Dum's face turned green, and he channeled his magic power in horror. The spirit snake's reaction was extremely fast, and while its head and neck were caught, it flicked its tail and wrapped around Amon's body, preparing to twist it tightly. At first, Dums wanted to capture Amon alive, but he did not expect the situation to become so dangerous in an instant, and he immediately wanted to strangle Amon on the spot. Amon was faster than the spirit snake, and he clenched his hands and twisted them hard. With a series of crisp sounds, the spirit snake that wrapped around him turned into a green light and exploded. Amon's clothes instantly turned into flying ash, and the snake scale armor on his body was charred and damaged in many places. This spirit snake was formed by the snake staff, and after being strangled by Amon, it returned to the snake sculpture form and appeared on Dum's bamboo staff, but Dum's spiritual power, which had been refined for many years, was greatly damaged, and he almost lost control of his body. But the impact on Amon was much greater than that of Dum's. Dum's was damaged because his mind was connected to the spirit snake, and this spirit snake had wrapped around Amon's body and exploded. Whether it was the elemental summoning or the power of spatial transfer, they were all shattered into chaos, and Amon could no longer control his body to continue flying, and he would fall heavily to the ground. Of course, Dums was aware of this, and there was a trace of a contemptuous smile on his pale face. He waved his staff and was ready to use another method to capture Amon, who was about to fall. However, before he could lift his staff, he shouted in surprise, and with both hands holding the staff, he pushed it forward with all his strength. It turned out that Amon, under the huge impact and unable to control the flight of the divine spell, actually flew up and kicked him in the chest. The series of changes just now was complicated, but it all happened in the blink of an eye. Amon swooped down from the air, grabbed the snake, and crushed it. The huge impact made him lose control of the magic, but his body still flew forward due to inertia. The golden light on his hands was shattered, and both his arms were instantly numb and sore, but he twisted his waist and raised his foot before he was about to fall. Dums was so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat. How could the gods fight like this? Was the person in front of him Ammonius on the altar, or a wild man in the marketplace? At the moment when his mind was attacked, he could not use any powerful divine spell, and could only use his strong physical strength to hold the staff to block. With a muffled bang, Amon's foot stepped right in the middle of the bamboo staff. The power of this foot could even break the city gate, but the bamboo staff was amazingly tough, and after a violent tremor, it was still intact. Amon used the force to do a somersault, and was thrown into the sky by the rebound force. Dum's body trembled as he flew down, and he was in a trance for a few times. Sometimes he was fast like a shadow, and then he would freeze in the air for a moment, and then he would fly down like a shadow. After flashing a few times, he was already standing on the hillside below. Dums was kicked down by Amon. Fortunately, he was kicked in the air, and there was no support in the air, so he did not completely rely on his body to resist. After Dums landed on the ground, his hair was flying, and his clothes were not disheveled. He looked much calmer than Amon, and he waved the bamboo staff towards the sky to condense his magic power. He wanted to stand on the ground and attack the falling Amon. If Amon could recover his flying ability at this moment, he would be smart enough to run away quickly. But Amon did not waste his magic power to control his body at all. After he somersaulted and was bounced into the air, he fell down like a stone. In the air, there were countless green smoke and fog, and it was about to condense into a snake shadow to entangle him. However, Dum's sneer suddenly changed, because he saw Amon's movements clearly. Amon turned in the air and fell in a parabola. He had already taken out a bow, and when he landed on the ground, he just happened to draw the bow. There was a sound like thousands of wild bulls roaring in all directions, and a force that attacked the soul firmly locked on to Dums. Amon did not care where he fell, and he just gathered his magic power and pointed at Dums without blinking. The bow in his hand was Gilgamesh's divine bow. When the bow was drawn, Amon just landed, and smoke and dust rose from his feet. He stepped on a huge rock, and half of it collapsed. He knelt on one leg in the gravel. In the air, countless illusionary green snakes of light had already formed. Dums could attack Amon with a wave of his staff, but at the same time, it meant that he would have to resist Amon's arrow. He had a flash of hesitation, but Amon did not hesitate. The bowstring was loosened, and dozens of shadows rippled in the spine of the bow, making a sound like rolling waves. The arrow he shot was not on the bowstring. There was a sharp whistle in the air, and a cross-shaped sword shot straight at Dums. Amon shot the Eye of Sealing. This sword had just been thrown out by him and turned into a long sword of 100 feet to kill the giant snake. The space collapsed and shrank, and the shadow of the giant sword was also shattered and disappeared. Then, it turned back into an ordinary long sword and fell from the sky. At this time, Dums and Amon had already landed. Amon drew the bow when he fell, but his power pulled the Eye of Sealing in the air, and when he landed, it just happened to be shot. Dums no longer had time to attack Amon. With a wave of his staff, the shadow of the snake condensed in mid-air instantly burst into rays of green light and wrapped around the Eye of Sealing. With a sharp roar, the Eye of Sealing pierced through the curtains of light and was slowed down. Dums took the opportunity to fall to the ground and roll, his figure turning into a golden snake glowing with green light and escaping. The golden snake sprang up along the treetops, turned into a ray of green light and flew away in the air. He actually escaped. As a divine emissary of the Anunnaki divine clan, Dums had long achieved the 9th level. His magic power was not weak, his means were not superb, and the snake staff in his hand was also extremely magical. But he made a terrible mistake today, and that was that he did not understand his opponent Amon at all. He had stayed in the underworld for too long and did not fully understand the changes that had taken place outside. Even if he knew a little, he would probably not bother to study a mortal like Amon. In his mind, Amon was nothing more than a lowly Duk miner. Although he had achieved a high level, it had only been a few years. How could he compare to a high and mighty god like him? He thought that as soon as he appeared, he would be able to subdue Amon, and without the protection of Murin, this brat could only obediently submit. Unexpectedly, Amon was not afraid at all. Not only that, but he was also terrifyingly calm. Amon looked at Dums as if he was looking at a street performer playing with a snake, but when he really made a move, he was not careless at all, and he did not care what tricks Dums used, nor did he care what habits the gods had when they fought. He fought completely according to his own way. Although he was not afraid of Dums, when he attacked, it was as if he was on the battlefield facing a life-and-death situation, and he even used a flying kick. There was one thing that Dums could never have imagined. Although Amon was only a young man in his early 20s, he had the same state of mind as the cat goddess Batet. Dums' feeling was anger at first, then shock, then hatred, and then fear. At such a close distance, the Eye of Sealing that Amon shot with Gilgamesh's divine bow was too frightening. If he was hit by this arrow, even if he did not die, he would be seriously injured. Even if his attack could also seriously injure Amon at the same time, what was the point? How could Amon's life be more important than his own safety? He could not stand this kind of fighting, and it was not worth risking his life to fight with this brat. It was better to run away quickly. Anyway, there would be other ways to deal with Amon later. As soon as the golden snake turned into a green light and flew away, the Eye of Sealing pierced through a curtain of light and inserted itself into the place where Dums had just stood, and then it was pulled out by a hand. Seeing that Dums was running away, Amon stomped his feet and flew over, pulling out his sword and also flying into the sky, shouting, "Dums, stop! I haven't finished talking. Who caused Peloponnes to suffer in the underworld? Tell me clearly." How could Dums listen to him? He continued to fly in the air, and Amon chased after him with the Eye of Sealing in his hand. After chasing for an unknown amount of time, the mountains gradually lowered, and they were almost at the edge of the Saya Plateau. Another huge mountain range appeared in the distance, the last barrier through the Saya Plateau to the plains of Duk. The mountains were high and rugged, and lush jungles grew halfway up the mountains, and the mountains were full of large and small cracks and caves. Dums turned into a green light and suddenly accelerated towards the mountainside. He was probably forced by Amon and wanted to hide in this huge mountain range. If Amon was not careful and did not lock onto his position, it would be almost impossible to find him in such a mountain. Amon flew down from the sky and pounced towards the mountainside, but he suddenly stopped in his tracks. He should have sped up to keep a close eye on Dumuzid, but he stopped and watched as Dumuzid disappeared from his detection range. He had chased him for so long, but he stopped just like that. It was surprising. Amon frowned and seemed to be thinking, then suddenly turned around and swung his sword again, as if cutting a passage in space. His figure disappeared from where he was, and in a blur of light and shadow, he appeared hundreds of feet away in an instant. At the place where he disappeared, a scroll fell down. It spun and unfolded, and an invisible force surged out. Amon gave up the chase, suddenly left his foothold, and unfolded a high-level scroll. This series of actions was simply inexplicable, and he did not find any danger. The most precious scroll Amon once had was, of course, Tiamat's Wrath. Of the 3 scrolls left behind by Nero alone, the other 2 were Spatial Turbulence and Information Annihilation. Relying on those 2 scrolls and Osiris' Rib, Amon was able to escape from Kela's underworld. It was difficult to find a master scroll maker like Nero in the world, and although Amon later had many more scrolls, he could no longer find anything comparable to Spatial Turbulence or Information Annihilation. What he unfolded at the moment was a high-level message magic scroll called Eye of Destruction, which could instantly destroy the camouflage of all kinds of message magic, and at the same time cause the space to become chaotic, making it difficult for anyone to detect. This was a very precious scroll, and although its effect could not be compared to Information Annihilation, it was already the best message magic scroll Amon currently had. Since the battle with the Uruk Legion, Amon had never used a scroll again, and even gave most of the scrolls in his hand to his disciples, leaving only a few for himself. On the one hand, it was because he had never encountered a situation of life and death again, and on the other hand, after mastering the 8th level of the Power of Origin, scrolls had become less and less useful to him. The advantage of scrolls was that they could perform various magic without consuming their own magic, but it took time to unfold the scroll, and the user also needed to control the attack range and direction of the magic. Although this time was extremely short, for the top masters in the world, it was often enough to determine victory or defeat or life and death. For example, in the face of an opponent like Enkidu, there was no time to use the scroll in a fierce battle. Even if the average person could unfold the scroll, with Enkidu's reaction and speed, he could dodge out of the attack range of the scroll in time. After all, it was not an instantaneous magic that the user could control at will. Moreover, powerful attack scrolls also had a drawback, which was that it was difficult to distinguish between friend and foe when used in a chaotic battle, and it was often easy to cause accidental injuries. But today, Amon suddenly used the scroll again, and the range of the attack was the place where he was just standing. He took out such a precious scroll just to take a look. Because he felt that something was wrong, he suddenly realized that there was a possibility that Dums deliberately wanted to lead him to this place during his escape. If the fierce battle just now was a normal exchange, of course, Dums would have lost. But if it was a life and death battle, Dums did not lose the ability to fight back, and his strength was completely capable of continuing to fight with Amon. He might have escaped because he was frightened by Amon, or he was unwilling to fight with his life. If that was the case, he should have disappeared as quickly as possible, but Dums did not. Amon was not superior to Dums in every way, at least Dums' speed in the air was quite fast, much faster than the wind shuttle. He rolled on the mountainside, transformed into a golden snake, and then turned into a green light and flew up. The eye of sealing shot by Amon did not hit him, and if he escaped at the same speed, Amon would not be able to catch up with him. But after flying in the air, his speed slowed down, just enough for Amon's detection magic to lock on from a distance, and he chased all the way. Maybe he was tired, Or maybe his instantaneous escape was just a kind of explosive skill, just like the speed of a short-distance sprint and long-distance attack were impossible. But when Amon chased near the mountain, Dums suddenly accelerated in the air and directly pounced on the mountainside, which meant that Dums could have flown even faster just now. If Dums really wanted to escape, he would have already escaped Amon's pursuit. Why did he delay until now and then accelerate? He almost couldn't escape. Amon was surprised and thought of a possibility. Dums was very confident in his speed, and he could guarantee that Amon would not catch up halfway, but deliberately led him to a prepared place. Whether this was possible or not, Amon's mind was determined, and he immediately stopped chasing. Then he flashed to another position and threw out the Eye of Destruction. He never felt the pain of using scrolls, and he was straightforward and efficient. Whether there was an ambush or not, and where the ambush was, he first made sure that there was no problem around him. This is the last night of the month, and it is very difficult to break through the list. I hereby ask for a conclusion. Chapter 206. 189. Gorgeous Turn. The Eye of Destruction was not an offensive divine spell. The scroll disappeared and turned into a transparent wave of air that spread quickly in the air. About 30 paces away from where Amon had just stood, a figure suddenly appeared. This person held a gray-white spike in his hand, and his body was bent like a fully drawn bow, ready to shoot out at any time to launch an attack. Amon was taken aback. He knew this person. It was Bright Moon Knight, who had tried to assassinate him in the charcoal marsh. Bright Moon Knight was the best opponent Amon had ever encountered. Just now, Amon had been closely locking on to the escaping Dums, and his attention was all drawn to the front. He did not expect Bright Moon Knight to have already lurked so close in midair. No matter how good a stealth skill was, it would still expose one's figure when one attacked, but the closer one was, the more sudden the attack was, and the greater the threat. Even Amon would find it difficult to defend against a full-force attack from a master like Bright Moon Knight at such a close distance. Fortunately, his reaction was alert and he did not make any mistakes. Bright Moon Knight was obviously on the same side as Dums. Dums failed to subdue Amon, so he lured him to this place. When Amon flew past, Bright Moon Knight could launch a fatal blow. He was already ready and was about to attack, but Amon suddenly stopped and then disappeared. An Eye of Destruction was opened, revealing his figure in midair. Bright Moon Knight was even more surprised than Amon. His first reaction was that the matter had been exposed, and Amon had long been prepared to deal with him. Amon did not give him time to think carefully. As soon as he saw Bright Moon Knight appear, he immediately let out a low shout and flew over from 100 paces away. Before he arrived, a series of crisp sounds came from all the joints in his body, and a violent aura spread out. Bright Moon Knight's appearance here surprised Amon very much, because he knew this assassin's powerful transformation skill. Today wasn't a full moon night, but rather a dim one. Right now, it was daytime and the sun was shining brightly. It was the most disadvantageous time for the moonlit night transformation. And according to John's judgment, Ming Yu would need to rest for at least half a year before he could fully recover to his peak state. For an assassin like him, there was a limit to assassinating top experts, otherwise it would be too terrifying. But even if Bright Moon Knight did not use the Berserk Strength transformation skill, she was still a calm and terrifying assassin. The most important thing in an assassination was to catch the enemy off guard. Amon did not expect to encounter Bright Moon Knight at this time and place. From this point of view, this assassin was very successful, but unfortunately, he was accidentally exposed. Ming Yu would make a move at this time and place. On one hand, it was to catch Amon off guard. On the other hand, if she dared to make trouble again before she had recovered to her peak state, it must be because she had Dum's help. It was tricky and dangerous to deal with such two experts at the same time, so Amon's first reaction was to get rid of Bright Moon Knight before Dums came back to attack, so he immediately entered the Berserk state, which could make his reaction speed and strength the strongest in a short period of time. Using the Berserk power was not without a price. Once he entered this state, the enhancement of one power would also limit other powers. Amon could no longer use the flight divine spell and would fall from the sky. But before he entered the berserk state, he had already flown up, shooting in front of Bright Moon Knight at an extremely fast speed and slashing down with the eye of ceiling. The sharp sword with a dazzling golden light could even cut a small mountain in half. The powerful pressure and explosive energy had locked Bright Moon Knight in midair, and the assassin had become the attacked. Bright Moon Knight waved his spikes in panic to block, and the spikes formed a shock wave that surrounded his body with a long howl. The sword light slashed on the spikes and disappeared into thin air, then shot out not far behind him, as if it was inexplicably shielded by space and then reappeared. Bright Moon Knight's magic power was not weak, and he was also good at using magic skills in combat, so he barely blocked Amon's powerful sword. His body trembled and floated downwards, and he was cut down from the sky by Amon's sword. Amon did not give him a chance to breathe, and followed him down from the sky with another slash. Bright Moon Knight could only raise his spikes to block as he fell, and the sword light and the spikes collided again. His body, which had just stabilized, accelerated again. Amon swung his sword down in the air, with an almost crazy power, and each slash was ruthless and accurate. Bright Moon Knight was really a ruthless character, blocking repeatedly as he was chased down from the sky. The two were like two meteors that kept colliding as they flew towards the foot of the mountain. Ming Yi landed with a loud bang, causing a large patch of trees in the forest to fly and creating a deep pit in the ground. Before he could jump out of the pit, Amon had already landed and stood on the edge of the huge pit, swinging his sword again. No matter how fast Bright Moon Knight's movements were, it was too late to get out of the pit at this moment, and as long as there was the slightest flaw in his defense, he would probably be cut in two by Amon's sword. He waved his spikes, but his movements were not very slow. He blocked back and forth with a long howl and shockwaves, protecting his entire body from head to toe. He shouted, "Demused, what are you still dawdling about for?" At this time, a blue light shot out from the mountainside where Dums had just landed, heading straight for the fierce battle between the two. Dums' voice shouted, "Didn't you boast that your stealth skills are unparalleled in the world? How did you get exposed? I haven't lured this brat into the trap yet." Bright Moon Knight roared angrily, "There must be something wrong with you that let him see the flaw." Bright Moon Knight was already in a difficult battle, and there was even a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. Clearly, he had been injured by Amon's wild slashes. He had not fully recovered his strength, and was fighting with Amon in a very disadvantageous situation, and had already suffered a lot. But at this moment, the tone of his conversation with Dums showed that he did not take Amon seriously. Perhaps in the eyes of these two people, after forming a pincer attack, they would definitely be able to win. Amon did not speak, and just as Dums was about to arrive, he suddenly turned his hand and slashed at himself. The sword light fell close to his back, and he instantly turned around. This turn was too strange, too beautiful, and beyond the imagination of ordinary people. He turned around, but he was still facing the same place, because what appeared now was the two-faced and four-armed Amon, and this turn had turned into another two arms and a face. Holding the eye of ceiling, Amon still stood at the edge of the large pit and slashed out with sword lights, making it impossible for Bright Moon Knight to escape. The violent power cut the hard rock formation deep underground into dust. The flying gravel also became a sharp weapon, hitting the shock wave of Bright Moon Knight's body with a constant buzzing sound, and the bottom of the large pit had already turned into powder. Turning around, Amon held Gilgamesh's divine bow, pulled back the bowstring, and shot an arrow at the flying blue light. This time it was not a tangible arrow, but a pure energy. The bowstring sounded and it was instantly released, and no matter how fast Dums was, he could not avoid it. With a bang, the blue light exploded not far away, and Dums' figure appeared. He held the bamboo staff in his hand and exclaimed, "How can you do this?" Amon, who was facing the bright moon, was in a state of berserk, his hair flying in the wind and his gaze, while Amon, who had turned around to face Demused, had a calm expression, and there was not even a trace of anger in his voice as he replied lightly, "This is the realm that I have verified." Similarly, There are also differences between the 9 levels, and the me that you are facing can be called Allah. Amon's use of this method was beyond Dum's expectations. This was not a phantom created by using message magic, nor was it a transformation magic to change his appearance. Both Amon had verified realms, had a complete personality identity, and even the magic power they cultivated and the means they were good at were not the same. To use an inappropriate analogy, it was like a person dealing with different people in the world with different identities. This was the realm of cultivation after having the 9th level achievement of endless arising, and it was a breakthrough after having stronger magic power and more profound knowledge. No one taught Amon, and Amon comprehended it on his own after revealing his face to Moses on Mount Sinai. It was as if another pair of eyes had opened in the dark. Did the cultivation of the power of the origin have to go through this process? What Amon did not know was that although this method was magical, it also had a price. Each complete identity had to be cultivated to the peak of the 9th level achievement and integrated without hindrance. Only then could one take the final step to transcend the realm of immortality. The changes shown by Amon at the moment were also related to the power of 2 sides he had once cultivated. After comprehending the power of the origin, Amon had understood that the true path did not have 2 sides, but after all, he had such an experience in his own cultivation and had insights that others did not have. At this moment, Amon was like a 9th level supreme warrior fighting with a sword against a moonlit night, or a 9th level supreme mage confronting Dums with a divine bow in hand, and the 2 identities could also borrow strength from each other. Demusage shouted in exasperation, "Did Murin teach you that? Did she break her oath?" Amon sneered, "Why do you always think so? You can't learn this realm without understanding it, it's not like reading or writing. When the day comes when you can really understand it, you don't need anyone to teach you. Poor God Dums, you have lived these hundreds of years in vain." Dum's face was livid. "How dare you laugh at me?" Amon curled his lips. "You are asking to be humiliated. I have no interest in you at all, and I never wanted to have any dealings with you. It was you who came looking for me." The 2 of them didn't hesitate in the slightest as they spoke. The bowstring in Amon's hand moved continuously, and a series of arrows condensed from invisible energy appeared and shot towards Demusage from all directions. Dums waved his bamboo staff, and the world seemed to be filled with a sizzling sound, which made people's bones numb, and the invisible energy arrows were dispersed one by one. The bamboo staff in his hand also split into green light, like dancing electric snakes attacking Amon. The bowstring in Amon's hand trembled so fast that the bowstring could not be seen clearly, and there were flashes of light bursting in front of him, constantly scattering the flying electric snakes. He had gradually entered a defensive position, and the number of arrows actively attacking Dums was decreasing. Using doppelgangers to deal with 2 people at the same time, Amon was still not good enough, and it seemed impossible for him to win. If the fight dragged on, he would definitely lose. And when Ming Yuyi saw that Dums was already fighting with Amon, he roused his spirits and roared, his figure growing out of thin air and transforming into a fierce half-man half-wolf. Under Amon's sword attacks, the large pit had become a terrifying world of rubble, smoke, and sword rays. He could not hold on with his injuries, and in a very unfavorable environment, he also entered a state of rage. Although his injuries might worsen afterwards, at this moment, he wanted to get rid of Amon first. Hearing the roar and a series of thunderous sounds coming from behind Amon, Dums knew that Ming Yuyi had gone all out. His expression became calm again, and he said with a sneer, "Amon, you really have some skills, you even dare to chase me, but you alone are no match for both of us. Hurry up and surrender, you can still live if you fall into my hands, but if you let Ming Yuyi deal with you, he will definitely kill you." Amon suddenly laughed, and said unhurriedly to Dums, "You escaped quite quickly just now, but have you forgotten that I can also escape? I admire your speed. If I escape, you will definitely be able to catch up, but do you dare to chase me alone? The reason why I haven't escaped yet is because I want to ask clearly. You said that Peloponnes is suffering in the underworld, what is going on?" Amon's words made Dums choke, and he forgot to answer for a moment. Yes, Amon could also escape. If he could not win, he could just turn around and fly away. Ming Yuyi was already injured, and could not fly in a state of rage. Once he ended his state of rage, he would become very weak, and his injuries would become more serious, so it was impossible for him to catch up with Amon. Dum's speed was very fast, but would he dare to chase after Amon alone? If Amon could not beat them, he could escape. The reason why he had not escaped until now was because he wanted to ask clearly. Demuzid was taken aback and was about to say something when the scene changed again. There were originally countless scattered winds and twisted shadows in the air, but at this moment, they were suddenly drawn by a force, condensing into long, solid ivy vines, densely entangling towards Dums. Someone had arrived, and suddenly attacked Dums. Dums let out a strange cry, and could not care about attacking Amon. Countless rays of green light exploded from his bamboo staff, shattering the ivy vines in the air. He stomped his feet and was about to fly away when a huge hammer with a long handle suddenly appeared in the air, smashing down with traces of electricity. The bamboo staff in Dum's hand transformed into a huge long staff, blocking the huge hammer head-on with a deafening roar. The illusion of the long staff was shattered, and he used the force to fly back in another direction. At the same time, he waved a green blade to cut away the ivy vines blocking his way. This boy's reaction was really fast when he escaped. But someone had long been prepared for this. When he rushed out of the ivy vines, a large green net suddenly unfolded in front of him. This net was also woven from vines, and there were fresh leaves on it. The edges of the leaves were sharp like short knives. Dums hit the net and cursed inwardly. He wanted to turn into a golden snake and escape, but it was too late. The net seemed to have a mind of its own. It immediately shrank and wrapped him in it, and he fell heavily to the ground. 3 people came out of the forest, and in the middle was Murin's elf maid, Shubra. On the left was a strong man in leather armor with bare arms, holding a long-handled hammer. He was the divine emissary guided by Murin, named Taku. On the right was a middle-aged man with a beard, wearing a white robe, named Shera. Like Taku, he was also the divine emissary guided by Murin. Murin had been a god who transcended eternal life for many years. She had her own divine palace of Murin, and there were many shrines in various places on the continent, as well as several independent small divine realms. After so many years, it was impossible for her not to guide others. Shera and Taku were her most capable divine emissaries. 2 days ago, Amon had met these two in the divine palace of Murin. Taku was once a supreme warrior, and now he had achieved the 8th level of the power of origin. And Shera was once a supreme mage in the kingdom of Babylon. Fortunately, he was taken into the Anunnaki divine clan by Murin, and now he also had achieved the 8th level of the power of origin. As soon as Amon saw these 3 people, he realized one thing. Dums had targeted him outside the divine palace of Murin, and Murin was probably aware of it and sent these 3 divine emissaries to meet him. As a result, they arrived at this time and captured Dums, who was the most difficult to catch. Amon put away his bow and asked, "Why are you here?" Shera lifted the vine net that had shrunk into a ball on the ground and shook it, and Dum's figure was revealed again, but his body was wrapped in yellow-green ropes. These ropes must have been transformed from the vine net, and could lock down Dum's transformation and power. Dum's face was extremely ugly. Shubra replied, "The goddess found that Dums had appeared near the rose garden and was afraid that something might have happened, so she asked the 3 of us to rush over to see how you were doing. I didn't expect him to collude with Bright Moon Knight to set a trap to try to deal with you. But your means are superb, and you don't need our help. It's just that this Dums is very slippery, and we took the opportunity to take him down. Since he wants to kill you, I'll leave him to you." Taku said with a giant hammer in his hand. Dums is good at transformation, and his flying speed is extremely fast. Once he escapes, it will be difficult to catch up. The last time the goddess wanted to take him down and send him to the underworld, she also sent the 3 of us to ambush him on his path and gave us this entangling vine net. Otherwise, we really wouldn't have been able to catch him. Today it's much easier, and we tied him up as soon as we made our move. While they were talking here, Amon and Bright Moon Knight were still fighting fiercely on the other side of the giant pit. He nodded and said, "Thank you for your hard work. Wait a moment, I'll subdue that werewolf first." Taku shook his giant hammer. "Do you need our help?" Amon shook his head. "No need, I know his strength, and I want to keep him alive to ask some questions." After speaking, he turned around, and the two faces and 4 arms merged into one. He put away the eye of sealing and jumped into the pit with a roar, fiercely pouncing on Bright Moon Knight, his fists emitting a dazzling golden light again. At this time, Bright Moon Knight was already an arrow at the end of its flight, struggling to swing the spike straight at Amon's chest. Amon caught the spike with a wave of his hand and swung it hard, swinging his body into the air and throwing him to the edge of the pit. Bright Moon Knight flew out and smashed a large part of the edge of the pit. Amon let out a roar and pounced on him in the smoke and dust, waving his fists and wrestling him. After the smoke and dust cleared, Shubra and the others looked into the pit and saw that Bright Moon Knight had returned to his normal appearance, his clothes torn and his hair disheveled. He was beaten black and blue by Amon, lying on the ground unable to move. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.